Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 203, on the saddest of saddest days because Adepticon has been canceled today.
Yay.
Probably for the better.
Yeah.
That it was canceled. I know they were kind of holding out and seeing what the government did, so that helped them a bit. But awesome, not so awesome.
Right thing to do. Bummer that it's the right thing to do.
And I got to tell you, first off, this is Carl.
This is Jody.
This is Josh.
This is Adon.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Adon.
My
I appreciate
pleasure.
you flying out for this.
Yep, I put on my hazmat suit and got on the plane.
That's right.
I came back from the dead. So.
Wow, way to flex and one up.
Let's take that, Arizona.
Get outdone, yeah.
I look forward to Adepticon, and I'm going to use the word literally, more than Christmas. And so I feel like my Christmas has been canceled here.
Yeah.
I'm
super bummed.
This was going to be a hell of a year, but you know what? We'll do it next year, and we'll make it happen then.
Oh, wait a minute. That means I don't have to finish painting that stuff. I just realized that.
Speaking of painting, wait till we get to the challenge.
Oh, I know.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, the thing I would say, Dave Taylor made a great post today saying, don't forget that you can still order online from a lot of the vendors that were going to be at Adepticon. Yep. This period of time is going to be financially difficult for very small companies, and for large companies for that. But I've seen my company's stock. Yeah. But please help them out. You are looking to go there and buy things anyway. Don't let this stop you.
Right.
Those people really do depend on you.
And there are some vendors who are actually doing kind of some specials. They're even continue to do something of their specials.
Oh, I'll bet they honor those things as well. So,
there's an airline. One of the airlines is laying off a bunch of their staff. And
it's tough.
Yeah.
So, but and honestly, this was tough for Matt and Hank and the guys that run Adepticon. Sure. And I mean, we're talking to the point where it could have very nearly killed Adepticon going forward. So, and for all we know, still may.
It could be hard.
I'm hoping not. But this is really the time to support a great, organization and an event that has brought so much to the community over the years. So cut these guys some slack if you're feeling like you're not, if you're feeling like you've been victimized or something, I'm telling you, you have not. So
they can keep my money till next year.
That's what I told them.
It's like
if it
whatever,
helps,
if it helps,
I'll even register again. I don't.
I want to see the show continue.
Yeah, for sure. So it's an investment in the future. Anyway, now that we start on that bummer note, this episode we are going to be talking about Necromunda Campaigns, which is why we have brought our specialist games correspondent Josh on the scene. We had to
straight from Nottingham.
Wait for you to get healthy, for God's sakes.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah, so I'm glad you're feeling better.
Make him sit next to me. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, if you could just scoot over here. So we'll be talking all about the campaigns of Necromunda and kind of the different campaigns there, as well as some of the supplements and what they kind of add to those campaigns. Josh has been running our Necromunda campaign.
That's right.
And it's fantastic. It's
arbitrating it.
Arbitrating it. Yes, you're the arbitrator.
Indeed.
So we're enjoying that. Okay. Also wanted to throw out Brian Berman. You are the show sponsor this episode. Brian is one of our Patreon supporters, and super appreciate your support.
Also very active on the Facebook.
Oh, super active. Yep. So if you don't know about our Patreon, then you're either cutting out the hobby progress section each
and the end.
And the end of
sometimes the middle.
Maybe you're just not listening. That's okay. We do have a Patreon. You can find links to it in the show notes. And last but not least, I did talk recently about our friend Perfect Pete out in England. Pete's uncle recently passed away as a result of lung cancer. Not a smoker, never been a smoker. I think he was very young. I have a link in the show notes about it, but they are doing a drawing for a copy of The First Wall. And they're asking people to donate, and then they're doing a drawing on it. So you can find more information in our show notes.
Limited edition copy, right?
It's the limited edition copy of The First Wall from Gapthorpe, and it's a great book. And it's the special edition version of it from the Siege of Terra. So they're trying to raise some money there towards this foundation about fighting lung cancer. So there's always a lot of people reaching for your wallet, especially, charitable organizations and that kind of thing, such as, Table War Charitable Organization, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But, give where you can. Give where you can. So let's take a break from all that and talk about Elite Choice. How about that?
Yeah.
Should we launch
Some
into
good
that?
stuff we
Some
saw.
really good stuff we
Who
saw.
wants to go first? Don, why don't you go first?
Sure. So one of the things, I go through and I kind of look at all the posts and try to zero in on the things
Moderate them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in the middle of moderating them. And I picked one. It's like, this is great. It's like, no, I can't pick Will Hahn again. I got to put him almost in the Jeremy Woods category.
He's getting close.
I know.
Yeah, there's going to be like a Hall of Fame, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you're really impressive. We're good for you.
Great.
Yeah.
Could you
Nice job on the eyeball, Will. Way to go. We're all very impressed.
Blue ribbons in the mail. It's fine.
So, and Isaiah Gittin was doing this really cool Bloodthirster, but it's not quite done yet. So I felt like, oh, if it's not done.
Is that the one I talked about last time?
You haven't listened to episode 202.5.
Oh, did somebody pick that one?
Carl did.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there's
It's
a
not
reason
just
you pick
any
it.
Bloodthirster, buddy.
It's
That's
really-
Angron.
Well, yeah,
And
whatever.
he looks fantastic.
So what did you pick?
Yeah, look at that.
I picked Benjamin Lewis Grace's.
I picked Jeremy Woods, Alpha League. What?
Get out. Fired again.
Oh my goodness. Benjamin Lewis Grace did some Harlequins, and other than the fact that he needs to go buy a macro mat for taking his photos, he uses his hand as kind of the backdrop for the photos. It's easy to find on the Facebook page if you're scrolling through photos, because he took them all in front of his hand. But the stuff he did, and what is it? I don't know what the name of that character is.
I think that's a Spirit Seer.
Is that what that is?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Shadow Seer.
Shadow Seer. That's
Shadow
the Eldar
Seer, yeah.
Shadow Seer. And then the other one's Dark Reaper, and then
Death Jester.
Yeah,
Death Jester.
but they're all the real old style models.
Yeah, they're like the second ed ones.
Yeah. And so he did them with the Goblin Green bases and the whole bit. But just the work on the minis themselves, really, really nice stuff.
That the level of paint on these guys is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. Like the funny thing is, I was going through picking my Elite Choice.
Oh, right.
And I picked it. I was like, oh, I like Benjamin's stuff. And look at the detail on this guy and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, the leg on that
I
house here.
posted all my pictures and then I scrolled down the notes. I'm like, oh, Don already picked this guy. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
What a
Yeah,
fantastic.
really nicely done.
I love when people take, and we've talked about this before, but take like the old models and that old style and then apply new paint approaches to them.
Yeah.
It really shows how awesome those old models actually were too.
Yeah, there's some real gems that have held up.
Yeah. I mean, some not so
And
much.
some they haven't. Yeah.
I was being positive.
Josh, how about you? What'd you pick?
Yeah, I went with Steven Sayers, and he's been doing a fantastic job working on the Sons of the Phoenix, which is a Primaris, all Primaris chapter.
Right.
Awesome colors.
From the Ultima.
Needs a little
Ultima
green in
founding.
there.
It's such a clean execution. It's white, a really nice crisp white, well lined, good contrast on panel lines, things like that, and then a really nice kind of pinkish purple accent,
Kind of
color
soft
that just
looking.
really pops on
Yeah.
there. He's actually done a couple things. So the thing I actually put this in a couple weeks ago before I got sick. So he had these aggressors, which is what the actual choice was, but he's actually done, I think, a nice Primaris captain as well since in the last week or so. And just everything that he's put out for this, it's a newer army that he's been working on just in the last couple months, I want to say. But every single thing that I've seen that he's put out there, I'm just consistently blown away by the quality of the execution.
Yeah, I like the way he pulled some of the purple into the base a little bit. Like some of the tiles have kind of a purple hue to them, and it kind of ties in the model.
Yeah,
I like. I mean, I'm not a color guy like Josh is, but
yeah,
for the novice, I thought that was pretty cool.
Even like the gold has some purple shading in it, which
Yep.
does a nice job of tying in with the rest of the colors. And it's beautifully executed.
it really is.
Yeah, keep it up, man. I can't wait to see more.
Jody?
Yeah. I think we all went pretty this go round.
Went pretty.
Bill Morlock, Emperor's Children. He's been actually posting a few different things. He's working on a narrative around, I believe, Corinth City, and he's been posting his Terminators and various Emperor's Children up on this wall. And the most recent group that I didn't drop into the show notes, but it's got his Terminators, and then he's using the app that adds like special effects around it, where there's like snow blowing around them and then lightning down around
That
his
really caught my
master
eye.
possession.
Yeah.
It's a great looking. They're really nicely painted. They're on great looking terrain, but then that whole special effects really kind of was evocative and made me instantly curious. Well, what is the narrative around these guys, and what is that event going to look like? And it's amazing how those little details, like we talked about a couple episodes, really can enliven something that's otherwise pretty static. And they're just really cool looking Terminators.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, Bill, nice job, man.
The funny thing is, I'm not usually like a fan of like pinks and that kind of thing, but sometimes when it's done really well, it looks so good. It looks so
absolutely. Good. And I think there's always that balance of like light and dark, and kind of like Josh in the one you were just looking at. There we go, Stefan's work, that you've got that really intense, crisp, bright white to play off the purple, and then Bill went with something where you've got these really dark undertones to balance out. You almost need something equally clean and intense to work against. Yeah, nailed it. What about you, Carl?
Well, I went with Tom Taylor Big and Charlie Brassley met for an Ices-inspired blind date.
That's awesome.
So, anytime the community brings a couple people together, like Ian and Eric, I really get excited because that's what it's really about, meeting people, having fun. So I'm glad both these guys swiped right and then met.
Like Jody said, we're going pretty this time. Right?
And they met and they played a game on a fully painted game on beautiful terrain. It looked like Imperial Guard and Space Marines, Ultramarines potentially versus Eldar. Both armies look fantastic in the pictures he posted.
So this is Brassley's Ultramarine successor chapter. Is it
is that what it is?
Chapter or Imperial? It's the one that has the Imperial Fists on it. I picked his stuff before these models.
They're incredible looking.
And he has a whole back. Remember, he wrote this really long background for it?
That's right.
Right.
Well, listen, I mean, I think it's awesome. I really appreciate that they posted the pictures and got together, had a good time, and I hope they continue to. So,
if you look at Tom Taylor Big stuff, he also did a Wraith Seer. It's holding one of the other.
Right. That is
I almost
incredible.
Picked that one.
The crazy thing about that thing is, like, you look at that model, and the one you're describing is a Wraith Seer that is crouched down and it's holding a Eldar in its arm.
Right.
Like the Eldar's clearly dead or something, and he's lifted it up. And the crazy thing about that model is I look at that thing and I'm like, this thing's telling a story.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I want to know what the story here is. And
that's what he wrote.
That's an incredible.
Right. And I wanted to pick that one, but I picked one of Tom Taylor's before, and I picked stuff from both these guys before, and I didn't want him to get a big head. And so what does Carl do? He picks them both.
Well, I was thrilled to see it because Tom and Charlie have both been so active on the community page. Both of them are very active. So to see the two of them together, I'm like, oh, that's those guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully this one night stand becomes a long-term relationship. And
wishing you the best, guys.
Well, that's how the ICs got its start, right?
Invite us to the wedding.
I met a nice man on the internet, and you and Jeff, here we are.
Yeah,
that's right.
Maybe I posted a picture from Big Jim's thing at Bay Area Open.
Yeah.
And there's Josh like, oh yeah, that's when I met you guys.
That's the day I met you, Aaron, Don, Jeff, Carl,
right.
Jim, everybody. That was a big day.
Is that when we met?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you and I met at KublaCon. Because I have a picture of you and I at KublaCon.
Scott and Jody.
I have a picture of you and I playing at KublaCon. You don't have a beard or mustache or anything.
It must have been.
Was that in episode 43?
Yeah, it could have been. Anyway,
episode 60, I think.
Let's move on. So great round of picks. Absolutely, just the group continues to just blow my mind. So, Adon, what have you been working on? Let's move into a little bit of workbench here.
So I put together my stuff for my Venators gang. I put out some extra guys, added some guys because I got some credits, got to add some guys. I'm still using the Z-axis bases.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
We'll be back right after these commercials.
Matt here to welcome you into 2020 and tell you about an amazing new offer from Table War. All returning customers receive an extra 10% off Table War's US web store. Need a tower case? 10% off. Need a new fat mat? 10% off. Need a macro mat, geomat, or just some accessories? All 10% off. This offer starts January 1st and will continue on throughout 2020. No coupon required. Just ensure you have an account and this discount is automatic. This is our way of saying thank you to all of our loyal customers. So visit us today at tablewar.com. Table War! Table War is a registered trademark of Table War Designs, Inc., all rights reserved.
All right, and we're back. Let's kick off some hobby progress. Adon, what have you been up
to? So I put together some more gangers for my Venators for Necromunda, the campaign that Alex is running back in the Valley of the Sun. And I'm still using the Z-axis bases. I really like
Yeah, they're great.
those. Works out great.
The Z-axis bases, for those who don't know, are like pre-painted. They're 3D printed, kind of pre-painted bases that are pre-magnetized as well, and they come with a tray. It fits perfect in the tableware case.
Exactly.
I use them for my Goliath guys. I love them.
Yeah. No, I like them a lot. And I added an Ambot. I think I added it the last time. I think when I talked about. I couldn't remember what I talked about the last time, but I know I added a couple guys since then. I got my cracked mirror match list completely finalized and got them put onto wires and reprimed them all black with the airbrush to get going, because I used a lot of the Primaris models that I had painted already for the starter set demo set.
And just to refresh people's memory, the cracked mirror match was a match at Adepticon.
I was getting there, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so cracked mirror match is a set list. It's for Adepticon, where he tells you what the entry is, but doesn't tell you how to kit it out.
Gotcha.
Right, and that's why it's kind of a cracked mirror.
An HQ, a heavy, 2 troops, blah, blah, blah.
No, specifically Primaris Captain, like Dreadnought, Intercessors.
2 intercessor squads, whatever.
And
gotcha.
But he doesn't tell you what kind of equipment to put on them. You get to pick, almost like power
Which is why
level.
it's running power level? Or is it running
it's just it's like power level, right? And that's why it's called a cracked, quote unquote, cracked mirror, because a lot of mirror matches, they tell you exactly how to kit it out. So the mirror
I get
matches.
that, but he's giving you a limit. Is he giving you a points limit or a power level?
No, neither.
Neither.
He's telling you
It's-
what
just
unit
have the
entries
entries
they are.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it comes out to
But it
76
comes
power
out
level.
to, okay, got it.
Right. But he says,
Okay.
you take a Terminator squad.
Got
not
it.
an assault Terminator squad.
Terminator
squad.
Yeah, I
And
got
you
you
decide
now.
how to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just a little dense.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's cool.
So,
Look, being dumb keeps me happy. I'm
like
just telling you that right now.
Bliss.
I put wires on them all so I could work with them a little more easily. And what I used was floral wires from Michaels that you use for making floral arrangement stuff. Because it's slightly lighter gauge than paper clips. And so they bend a little bit easier, but also they're less. I like the fact that they're less rigid. I may or may not end up using them to actually put them onto the bases. I like paper clips for that part of it, but I liked it for being able to get a long, straight piece instead of unbending paper clips and trying to. I did it as an experiment. I'm liking it so far.
Is there a plastic coating on those or no?
No, not at all.
Okay, cool. For another thing to try, it's super cheap. I've used it for years. Really happy with it. Stovepipe wire. Any hardware store will have it. It's the wire they use to hold up your stovepipe over your stove. It's super cheap. It's the right gauge. It's similar to a paper clip. It's bendy but a little more rigid, like you said. And
the thing at Michael's, they have different gauges of it, so you can try a couple different ones. It's not super expensive at all. Obviously, paper clips are
plentiful.
Plentiful, but I always find them a pain in the to use because you can only get like 2 or 3 out of each. It
totally sounded like I just edited out.
that was
but I didn't cut anything.
Always
right
swearing.
there.
Self-censored.
Anyway,
This guy's
so
a trash mouth over here.
did I?
No, you didn't
I
at
didn't.
all.
Okay.
You self-censored. That's why we're joking.
I decided to use the plasma version of the Inceptors instead of the ones that came in the starter box. I had to buy a unit of those. I actually kind of like them with the little helmet visor things.
Okay.
Yeah, so I bought those. I was going to reprime the Captain. I'm like, okay, I got to get the Captain. I was like, oh, crap. It's a Primaris Captain, not the one from the starter box, which is in Gravis armor. So I actually had to go out and buy a Primaris Captain.
What do you mean plasma version of the Inceptors?
The Inceptors, the guys, the flying guys.
There's
two different versions. You can get them with assault bolters.
See, this is the problem with the way the Primaris guys are.
I know.
Because
They're
I was
all
thinking
eyes.
intercessor.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
intercessors, Inceptors,
I don't think you mean
interceptors.
intercessor. I think you mean
Inceptor?
Inceptor,
Like you said?
Hellblasters?
Hellblasters is what I thought you
Yeah.
meant.
Oh,
I'm like
no,
plasma version of an intercessor.
They all have
Wouldn't that be a
plasma,
hell?
Carl.
Yeah, I know. That was, again,
Yep.
I'm not a smart man, but I'm happy.
Well, if you hadn't had those 3 scotches before we started, we'd be in a lot better shape.
All right.
Got here sooner.
So
Yeah.
I had to go out and buy a Primaris Captain because I didn't have one in the regular power armor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to get that. I was thinking about doing Stalker bolt rifle. Hits on a 3+ if you move, but he rerolls 1s. Because it's mastercrafted.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went to the Black Library Celebration Day at the local Warhammer store.
Oh, nice.
Bought some of this novella
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
It was funny because the manager goes, "Well, those didn't come out for today. Those have we've had those for a while.
Like, okay.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I'm going to buy them anyway.
Oh, you're right. Well,
you telling
never
me not
mind.
to
I
give you
won't
your
buy
money?
them now.
I finished, I'd never read any of the Gaunt's Ghost stuff.
Oh my God.
So the
Please.
first and only.
Which is the first three
First
books,
three
right?
books together.
What'd you think?
I loved it.
Incredible, right?
I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And so I can't wait. I mean, I did that one on Audible. They're gonna
Ends with Necropolis, right? Is the third book, I believe. Yeah.
I don't know.
It
All I
is.
know is that I was listening to it on Audible and it was awesome.
It is.
So
and I gotta tell you, like, it's a great series. Like, keep reading it.
Yeah.
Those first three are really the pinnacle of the series. Like, especially that third book.
really, now you're gonna tell me that after the third one they fall off, and I just
No, they're still good.
Oh, okay.
But that third book still held a very special place in my heart.
Oh,
Like, it's up there with Eisenhorn
oh, really?
in my mind. Yeah.
This is the one where they're on the grav train and trying to get into the central complex, and
It's the one where the huge city's being assaulted by the Chaos Forces. There's at one point there's a Bane blade that like comes into the town. I swear this is book 3, Necropolis. I could be wrong. Maybe it's book 4.
I don't know.
Maybe
Could
it gets
be.
better. Anyway,
Anyway,
you
also
keep
listen
talking.
to-
I'll look it up.
Also listen to Talarn,
Oh yeah,
which
yeah.
was not what I expected it to be
Nope.
at all.
By John French.
Yeah. Was awesome, though. I was expecting more of the Talaran IG guys.
That's the largest tank battle
Right.
in Horus Heresy history.
Right.
Oh, cool.
Oh yeah.
So it was pretty cool. And the whole, you really get that. I thought you got a really good sense of the closed-in claustrophobic. You can't get out of the suits because it's poisonous atmosphere. I really felt like that was conveyed well.
It's making it itch to play a spearhead game.
Yep, Necropolis.
Yeah.
Third
Exactly.
book in the Gaunt's Ghost series. I was
Okay.
pretty sure. It's a good one.
The first wall, most of the way through, I think. First wall. I was listening to it on the way over, actually, as a matter of fact.
This is Gav Thorpe, so third book.
Yeah, third book.
Yeah,
And,
of the Siege of Terror series.
yeah, not counting all the novellas and audio dramas. And
There's
things
only
that keep
one.
that dropping.
Only one novella so far.
They just announced another one.
They just announced another one.
Yeah,
It's a sore point with me.
I know it is. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah,
I like to see that
picking,
face.
Just keep picking at it.
That one's Magnus specific, so you're gonna read it.
I'm not saying I'm not going to read them, but this is this is the thing. If they keep coming out with them, I'm going to stop buying the special editions and sell off my special editions. I'll just wait and get it in digital. Because like I signed up for 8 special editions. Like that was the big selling point. I was like, cool. I want that full 8-book series. That's what I want. Now it's 10. If it continues to grow,
I can get you a special edition of the audio drama.
can you?
Yeah.
Is it wrapped in
It
Dolby
is.
5.0
It
surround
is.
sound?
It's signed.
So
Don't tell me that was good. Don't
that was
encourage it, Jody.
that one worked for me. I like that.
I'm listening.
All right. Anyway,
I'm listening to the first wall, and
you've done the first 2, right?
yeah.
What was your kind of thought on the first 2?
I like this series. Following the Japanese guy who's a conscript and got pushed into service.
Yes.
And I thought it really evoked well that kind of sense of basically you have no
You're screwed.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
Right. And just that sense of hopelessness and
Yes.
and inevitability, and keep moving forward because if you fall, we're just going to trample you.
Yeah.
And just having to come.
He's
to
an
terms with
interesting
that.
character.
Yeah, he is. I think he is.
Yeah.
And so, and then going back to the third book, they kind of delve a lot more into the cult of the Emperor.
Yep.
And,
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
Oh yeah, very much so. And so that whole thing and the push pull between the Custodes and Malcador regarding that, it's very interesting, and I like where it's going.
And it's
there's
also-
stuff that I totally didn't.
You don't see
expect.
coming.
No.
And
I just
what's
got to a major
interesting
twist
is you have you have these conscripts. I mean, you have these soldiers now, trained soldiers, making their way from basically Africa to where the fighting
Well, I
is.
wasn't talking about that. I was talking about the first
No,
couple books.
I'm talking about these guys making
Yeah.
their way there.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that third book is that it keeps bouncing backward and forward in time.
I hate that.
Oh, I love it.
I hate it.
I absolutely love it. I love that they're like, this is what's happening 4 days after. Because at the beginning of the book, they kind of give you a heads up as to what's going on with these particular characters. And then you kind of see it as a countdown leading towards that. And you're like, well, what gets them to that point?
I
And
don't like it.
Wait till you get to the end of the book.
I already got to the major twist,
Okay.
and as a general rule, and I think I've talked about this before, I don't like stories that bounce back and forth in time.
Yeah. If it's done right, and in this case, I felt like it was done right. So
Yeah.
that's me. But that's fine. Yeah. That's cool.
That's
You're
why I
just
don't
wrong.
watch that TV show, This Is Us.
I don't watch that.
No.
Okay. Anyway, cool. I like it. Adon hates me. That's
No,
cool.
no, no. I see where they were going with it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's as a device, I think it's overused by GW, but it's okay.
Okay.
Maybe it's just because the books I've picked recently have all done it.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's
That'll do it.
that might be
Yeah.
it. I don't
Okay.
know.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so that's me.
Okay.
Because you don't want to count all the other
Josh. No, I don't
Yeah.
even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Nope.
Because all we play here is 40K.
I built
I just,
500 points.
I don't care what Brian Harvey says.
I know. We do play
that guy.
40K. Yes.
So it's been a couple episodes since I've been on. So
I made you, Cosell.
So I've been fairly productive. I had a backlog of stuff that I just at the beginning of this year, like I kind of took inventory and I just really wanted to get some projects done. So I've been chipping away towards
The
that.
theme of the year.
Yeah, but then also adding a couple things that are interesting and inspiring in the beginning. So I'm just gonna run down it quick. So first thing I got was the new Shadow and Iron book for Adeptus Titanicus, which is pretty fantastic.
I saw that came out
Is
and I
it?
was like, I'll bet Josh gets this.
I sure did. It does some really nice adjustments to round out campaign play, which I'm super excited for our campaign kicking off with that. It just makes there's a couple logistical things that just makes it even easier to kind of approach and get started with. And then it also has a bunch of new formations and legios, mana pools, things like that. So great book. Continues the wonderful standard of Adeptus Titanicus. I built a rogue doc for the challenge, which I'm a little late on since you guys recorded since I got sick. But in our Necromunda campaign, I keep having guys permanently die.
Yeah.
So I needed to get myself a rogue doc to prevent them from dying. So gives me a reroll. It's not a model that's going to hit the table often. There's only a chance of them being on the table if it's if I have home turf advantage.
Right, if somebody
in a
attacks
game.
you in your home turf.
So then there's a chance that your random hangers on actually participate in the battle.
Like my ammo
So
jack.
So they're not great characters, but he has cool kind of post-game effects. But in-game, he can also do some fun bonuses of helping people. I also built 2 Ambots for Necromunda, which is super fun kit to put together.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah,
Everybody says
it's
really
a
great.
really enjoyable model, and you get 2 of them. So
It's actually not a bad value at all.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
I've been eyeballing picking some of those up.
So the Rogue Doc,
Yep.
and maybe we should be talking about this later, but how many credits does it take you to to end up with him in your crew?
50 credits.
Which is way cheaper than going to the doctor.
It's less than a single roll is likely to be. On average,
Right.
it's going to cost you 70
Right.
credits to go to the doctor.
right.
Where you are by having one in your gang, you can have up to 2 rogue docs in your gang. You're doing 50 credits to have them in your gang permanently. The
Right.
downside to them is they're not quite as good, so you can't just get the full recovery. You get the reroll, but
Right.
you can't just be like, oh, you're good to go.
Right.
You're going to have some consequence, but you get a nice discount. And if you don't have credits in your
that was my
for your
problem.
gang at the end of the game,
That was my
still
problem.
get the doc, which is cool.
Oh, 65. Oh, you can go see the doc. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have any money for that.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and sometimes the doc fails. So
Oh, yeah. That's
Oh,
even
we
better.
saw that
Yes.
happen too.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry to go on that.
Yeah. I also built 6 subjugators, which are the kind of more beefier, heavier armored and armed enforcers. So I already
the
had
shields and stuff.
I had the 10 enforcers already built up, so I wanted to add the subjugators because I didn't get the Dark Uprising box set.
Yeah.
So I had to wait for the subjugators to
To get
actually come
released.
out separate.
Right.
So built those guys up, and that gang is all ready to be painted up. And there's going to be a fun event in our campaign here, which the fuzz is going to roll out in force. So
Nice.
Aaron finished painting all his guys.
nice, yeah.
He's
that's
ready to
perfect.
go.
Oh, did
He
you see the
showed-
new model they
And,
showed?
our buddy Cliff in
She
Santa
looks
Cruz is
awesome.
on board for that too. For
Did you-
enforcers.
with the
Cyber
Cyber
Mastiff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she looks cool. Sorry.
Did you see Cliff is like almost done? Was he sending you those pictures?
No,
Yeah, so Cliff in our Santa Cruz group we convinced him, hey, you should jump in on this because Aaron's not going to show up. challenge.
Yeah, no, hey,
Challenge.
gauntlet thrown.
Gauntlet
Prove
thrown.
us wrong.
Like, yeah.
Prove me wrong. Anyway, so Cliff was down for Enforcers too, and I'm shocked. Like he sent me a picture the other day, and they're mostly painted. I was
Nice.
like,
Yeah.
keep going,
That was
man.
quick.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
I was talking to him a couple weeks ago, and he was finalizing his paint scheme still. But
Yeah, you got it.
Aaron
dialed
has
in
been
there.
working hard on them. He has them all painted now.
That's awesome.
Rad.
Hope
Yeah.
to see him.
Sweet. Speaking of painted, I've just hammered out a couple things. So the brand new Nemesis Warbringer kit that came out for Adeptus Titanicus, I picked up 2 of those and painted both of them because I was hoping to take a Ruptura Maniple to Adepticon.
Okay.
Because,
Right.
It's so 2 Nemesis Warbringers and a Reaver, and it's a fun Maniple that lets the Reaver basically move boosted without having to roll on the reactor. And if one of the Nemesis kill something, if they get an engine kill, then the Reavers get to move again right there as if it was the movement phase.
Yeah.
So I was taking my my Chain Fist Reaver with that and just hoping to slingshot him forward and just go, I don't know if it's good, but it's going to be fun. So
So what does the Nemesis Warbringer look like? I'm not aware of this model.
oh yeah, so this is the newer Titan that Forge World put out 2 years ago, I want to say,
Yeah.
for full size.
Yeah,
Warlord.
it's kind of in between.
It's in between a Warlord and a Reaver, and
Yeah.
it kind of looks like a combination of the two.
Huh.
Yeah.
something I hadn't seen before. They have a full size version.
It's the one
of it
with
in
a
resin.
giant cannon on its back.
Oh,
that
yeah,
Top
yeah,
Gun-
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Giant
him.
cannon. Okay, yeah.
giant cannon guy.
Giant cannon.
Yeah,
guy.
it's that one.
So picked up 2, and I got to say that kit, like Forge World or Games Workshop, whoever's actually designing this kit, even from the Reaver kit and the Warlord kits, like they've learned a couple things. Like the base model, it's all indexed. So if you want to just build it as is, everything just slots in perfectly for how it is.
Yeah.
The weapons, their arms are the same weapon types as Reaver arms, but they are designed to fit a magnet in there, so you don't
That's
have to do any
awesome.
kind of custom work.
Oh, cool.
The cabling fits in there, even if you magnetize it, because it'll just pop in and off, and it matches up with the same spots. So I built one that was just kind of the stock indexed pose, and then I built one that I did a decent amount of conversion and
Nice.
converted a weapon for it. On one of the top Carapace weapons is a Bellicosa Volcano Cannon, which hasn't released yet. So I used one of the
to mod it,
Warlord
yeah.
ones, and I cut that down, cut it up, and converted that. So I had both options for that. And I'm just going to go through the rest here.
Painted.
Yeah, more than a couple of things, I got to say.
I've been busy, but it's also been a couple episodes since I've been
Yeah,
on. So.
and also to be fair, what race is he about to talk about painting?
Well, that's true.
Hey, I do more than most.
You do. I'm just joking.
A big part of what's been holding me up for the final hurdle of Adeptus Titanicus stuff is decals, because I'm playing Legio Zystobiex, and they're not officially supported as of yet.
Yeah.
I think there'll probably be a Prospero book coming out at some point. But I did the actual graphic design of their Legio insignia, and then I sent those over to Fallout Hobbies and got custom decals printed out.
Nice.
Which turned out really well, and those guys did a
cool.
fantastic job. And so now that I have the decals, I've gone in and that, starting with the Ruptura, I was hopeful for Adepticon.
Yeah.
Busted out the oil wash and decals on those 2 Nemesis Warbringers and the Reaver, and the rest of my Titans, now that I have that stuff, are
can't wait
are
to
going to
see
be
those.
coming in pretty soon.
Yeah.
I did post pictures on the Discord and the Adeptus
haven't seen 'em.
Titanicus
Yeah, I'll
group,
have to
so,
take a look.
they're up there. But
This Adeptus Titanicus thing from Adepticon, as we were talking about for the games that, you do stuff, games here, we should just do an event here.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Just do it
We're
here.
going to.
it's happening.
Yeah. We got the time off.
Yeah.
Might as well do it.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
3
I think
days of gaming
I think
here.
one day you do Blitz Bowl in the morning, Titanicus in the afternoon.
Yep. You weren't here when we were discussing this. You and Matt have been signed up to run Blitz Bowl.
Oh, sweet.
On the Friday of
totally.
Adepticon weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll both be at work, sadly.
Oh, you're not going to take a time off?
But weren't you going to be out at Adepticon?
I was, but if I'm not, I can't be. I mean, I could, but
Well, maybe
Kids,
we'll save
man.
that for Saturday.
Saturday,
yeah.
yeah.
Hey, I'd be down. I know he would too.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll find a way.
Yeah,
make it
we'll
work.
crush it.
All right.
Speaking of Adeptus Titanicus, I busted out some Gatling blasters,
We
which
gotcha.
are Warlord Carapace weapons.
Yeah.
Just some more alternate weapons. They're really good at stripping shields, and again, fun because it's Adeptus Titanicus. Everything's fun. Jumping into Necrons, because I have that large project. I'm now down to the point where I only have 9 Necron models left in my collection that are
Wow.
not painted. So those are going to be falling in line pretty quickly.
Out of a large neckline.
Yeah, it's huge.
I don't know how many 6,000+ points worth
Yeah,
of painted
yeah,
stuff as is. So Necron Sentry Pylon, I've had this one base coated for a long time, and I finally just took it to that final step to completely finish.
In other
that
words,
out.
you put a wash on it then.
No, I actually I had to touch it up a bit, some of the metallics, and then do all the glowy kind of inlaid.
I was just
areas.
making a Necron
I
joke.
know.
Yeah.
But I told
Were
you
you?
I do more.
Yeah.
I do more. I don't
I
just
know.
dry brush silver. Nothing
I know.
silver. Even my metallic isn't silver. It's platinum.
Yeah. Then he uses a wash.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it highlights it.
And then orange.
3 more Necron Destroyers I got painted up.
Those are good units.
They're fantastic units. And
Do you like them better than the heavy?
speaking of heavy destroyers, I also painted up 3 of those.
Oh.
Which
you have
I
your
converted because I'm not a fan of the super long
Yeah.
single gun cannon they have. So what I took was the Triarch Praetorian has a the actual weapon that those heavy destroyers are supposed to have. I'm blanking on what it is right now. Heavy Gauss cannon.
Sure.
Is what it is. So I actually took the kit from the Triarch Praetorian and converted those so they actually have the weapon. Because nothing in my army has the green glowy rods. It's all been converted. Like each individual gun barrel has been replaced by the non-plastic glowy rods. So there's actually some involvement in my Necron army.
He's sounding defensive now.
Necron Destroyer Lord. I also busted out one of those. I had the model and it's been sitting around for a while, and it's since I have all the destroyers and heavy destroyers now, he's a good little synergistic point to add in there. I had a Necron Cryptek, which I had also converted years ago, and he had been mostly painted. He'd been like 85% painted, so I just finished him off and. Along the lines of getting stuff done, 10 Necron Warriors. I also busted them out, start to finish.
Start to finish, like assembled them?
They were assembled and primed already. So
okay.
It was, as far as painting goes, it was just the actual putting paint on models.
Nice.
And then the rest is my Deluxe starting gang was already, the first 10 models had been built and mostly base coated. So I just finished them off in time to get our campaign going for those, get that gang going. And then while I was at it, I finished those guys off pretty quickly thereafter. I actually got a second box of models, so I just went ahead with the Forge World upgrade kit that I'd purchased a while ago, built up extra models. I converted a Deluxe Spiker, which is their kind of special psychic guy, which was a fun conversion to do. And that's painting. So it's been a productive.
Is that all?
That's it for now. But wait, there's more. I'll have like 8 Titans in the next time I record. So. I also read a couple books. I read Belisarius Call, The Great Work.
What'd you think of this book? Because I'm just starting it.
It's interesting. There's parts of it that I really like.
Yeah.
From a narrative standpoint, I'm actually really excited by it because of what happens. There's some cool interaction with Primaris Marines, Genestealer Cult, and Necrons.
Okay.
All together in the story.
Nice.
Which is pretty neat and actually kind of really inspired me for a direction to take on a campaign with Matt with his Genestealer Cult specifically.
Cool.
Because he has Death Watch and Genestealer Cult, and then I've got Primaris Marines and Necrons. It's kind of a beautiful mashup of kind of starting from a similar framework for how
I found the depiction of Call to be very interesting, especially as it looks back 10,000 years and then jumps forward 10,000 years.
Yeah, Don would hate this book.
Yeah, totally.
Although I do like Call from the first one.
There's parts that I really... Call's an interesting character because he's actually intentionally pretty annoying.
Right.
But it's entertaining. And there's some really fascinating interactions that happen in the book. Overall, I wouldn't say it's at the top of my list for favorites, but there's definitely some moments out of it that I definitely enjoyed and was happy to have read it.
Cool.
And then
I just started it, so I'm curious to see how it goes.
Yeah, it goes pretty quick. There's a couple parts that I just kind of lost interest, but came back to it pretty quickly. Speaking of not losing interest, I reread Betrayer again because I just read that one in 3 days because it's such a great book. And the main motivation for me rereading Betrayer was from all the actually the Titan action in it because the Legio Ardax, however you pronounce it, is now available, and they're the Warhound exclusive Titans that were partnered up with the World Eaters, and hoping to get Brian Harvey on board with those guys.
Cool.
So because
that's a hard
all
sell.
about firing Ursus claws and blood, kill, maim. You know,
That's
so
all right,
yeah.
so.
Yep, that's me.
Jody, what have you been up to?
Finished painting something I mentioned a while back. I finished painting a Blitz Bowl team.
Okay.
They
What a
look
surprise.
Real good.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, so technique wise, because there is a technique point that I'll
I
touch
totally
on
had
here.
that T-shirt though.
What?
That chaos like spray paint T-shirt back in like 1989.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
No, I just had a T-shirt that looked exactly like that.
Oh, because I did
But
like
it
this
looks real good.
stippling marbly kind of effect. I'd never
I saw
painted
it.
something with a marble effect before, and I didn't start out thinking I was going to do that, but I just kind of started jabbing paint onto their armor, and I knew I wanted purple armor, and I ended up doing a marble pattern for the first time. So hey, try something new. Looked at what James Wapple does for his, because speed painting all the things, always a good resource for that. A blunted brush and a little bit of fine detail work, and ta-da, marble.
Nice.
It's shockingly pretty easy as long as you're willing to go light on some colors. But yeah, I mean, it's only been a week since Carl and I recorded.
Exactly.
So I finished a team and I feel good about it.
I did not finish anything. I pulled out my Black Legion guys and started working on 10 Black Legion dudes. So
Yep.
Started the painting.
yeah, but I was also a little concerned because I want to know what the next challenge was.
Aha.
So,
there it
so let's talk about the next challenge, because originally what our plan was
Yep.
go to Adepticon and let people pick it there. But since Adepticon, as we know, not happening, I don't know how many times we're going to have to say that this episode. Without
No more, please. It hurts
Did you
every
hear my
time.
voice crack?
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
We decided Josh should get to decide this go around, because Josh is running our Necromunda campaign. He did a lot of research for this episode. I think it's Josh's turn to pick a challenge. So Josh, lay it on
Before
us.
we do that,
Oh, wait. Okay, hold on.
could maybe
Suspense
Josh and I talk about what we did for the last challenge?
Sure. Josh did, actually.
I did a rogue dock.
Yeah.
Which I mentioned.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I can
I'm
talk
looking
about
at
the specifics of it.
yeah, it looks so cool.
Yeah, so I wanted to build just a couple of high scum, like little gangers, hanger-on gangers, that if you're ever short on points in Necromunda, one of the things which we'll probably touch base on a little bit later is that if your gang rating is below other gangs you're fighting, you can bring in just hive scum, and they're basically guys that fight for you one time and then they go away. You have to pay. You get kind of, it's like Blood Bowl, where you have inducement points to spend. So it's kind of one-time money. You spend it right there, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
They don't stick in your gang. So anyways, I bought a box of the Corvus Cabal Warcry miniatures.
I thought that's what that was.
to use as a base to convert some cool minis up. That so I bought a box of the Corvus Cabal, and then I also got some Skitari, just some Skitari Rangers.
Is that what the
off
weapon
of,
on the back is?
That'll get to. I got just a handful of Skitari Rangers off eBay that somebody was getting rid of. So I'm like, oh, cool. They've got cool bits on them. I really like the aesthetic of those models.
Yeah.
I'm never going to play an AdMech army, but I'll cut them up and steal some bits. So it's the majority of this model is one of the Corvus Cabal guys, which I used the kind of the plague mask look of it to fit the theme.
If people don't know what you're talking about, it's like that long beaked
Yeah,
mask.
it's got a long beak face. So what I did for this model is I had to cut off a couple of his arms, or both of his arms actually.
A couple of his two arms.
A couple of his two arms. That's how it works. He had a giant sword in his hand, and I liked the sword look initially, but then I looked at the Rogue Dock equipment, and he has a las pistol, so the sword had to go. I was gonna just do it as like basically a giant butcher cleaver as his Rogue Dock.
Right.
This is his fine precision science tool. So anyways, you got a mechanical arm on there, got some little mechandrite things just to make the model look a little bit more grimdark 40K. The pull on the back, which Adon was asking about, is part of it is from the Skitari backpack, and the other part is just a brass rod.
Got it.
So where the sword for the arm that I cut off actually has a pole that it connects to. So I could have been very delicate in cutting off the sword from that pole and reusing that same pole, but instead, because it's a pretty fragile piece,
Go with the more durable.
I went with brass rod,
Right.
And then attach the backpack top on top of
Nice,
that.
dude.
Oh, okay.
This is a really cool looking
It's
model.
very
Actually,
neat,
it's
yeah.
very clever,
Yeah, thanks.
and the use of the multiple kits, like when you're pulling from like a totally different game, even.
Yeah.
Very
But
cool.
I mean, the plague mask makes so much
That's
sense.
what I'm talking
for
about.
the
Yeah,
Rogue
it
Dock.
just really works. How did you what was you're all, I need a dock. Like,
Yeah.
how did you come to this plan? Like, what was the inspiration?
It's just an idiot savant.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
To what one of those words applies, right?
Savant, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
A big part of it was because I wanted to get some high scum guys.
Yeah.
I already had the idea of getting a couple of the kits with the Corvus Cabal. I just like the aesthetic of them.
Yeah.
And then the Skitarii Rangers and finding a way to mix and match them. And
But I mean, was your objective from the beginning like, I want one of those plague mask things, or you saw the Corvus Cabal and were like, that would make a good plague mask thing? Like, what?
Right.
What was the instigator?
So I had already purchased the 2 kits with the intention of just hacking them up for conversion stuff, but then saw the potential for the plague mask specifically for the rogue dock. And that was also inspired from two of my gangers permanently dying in 2 games in a row. So
Right.
like, I need to get myself a rogue dock.
Wonder who
Hey,
did
we're doing a challenge. Perfect. I'm going to convert one up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Adon, what about you?
I did 2. One was more detailed than the other. One was just I took the old metal chaplain.
Yep.
Because I needed a chaplain for the crack mirror match, and filed off the top of his bolter, got a piece of the combi flamer piece from another kit, and throw that on there. So that was a real simple one. The other one was my my tax squad sergeant, and I actually don't even know where the torso is from. That has the shield with the wings on it. Josh said he thought it was from
I'm pretty sure it's
multi-part
I think the
captain
5th
kit.
edition
Might be,
multi-part
yeah.
captain. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and so I think that's what that's from. But I like the front end of it was cool. He has kind of almost like a Sisters of Battle Black Templar kind of belt line
Kind of
with a
feel to it,
tabard.
yeah.
And I wanted him to have a Thunderhammer. And the way that Crack Mirror is, if you say he has a Thunderhammer, he better have a frickin' Thunderhammer. So the only one I had was a Terminator one. So I filed down the arm and the shoulder so I could actually put a Space Marine shoulder pad on it.
Nice.
So I did that. And on the other side, I wanted to have a chainsword. Because remember, I asked a question to you guys: if he has a chainsword, does he get the extra attack?
Right.
And yes, he can. He can get his regular attacks with the Thunderhammer, and then get the extra attack with the chainsword. So I was like, okay, cool. For a tax sergeant, I'd really like that. So the chainsword is actually from which set was it that had the Dark Angels in it? The starter set.
Dark Imperium?
Dark Vengeance.
Dark Vengeance. Right.
That's it,
So
yeah.
the Dark Vengeance captain on a bike. That's the chainsword from because it's kind of out to the side and looks really kind of,
Yeah, its pose is pretty good.
So, but that was made specifically to like fit on that captain. So I actually had to take that shoulder pad and with a Dremel tool, like Dremel it out. So it would actually fit on the shoulder because it was the way it was flat, it wouldn't fit.
The other thing you probably could have done was maybe even easier, though, would have been to cut the hand off at the wrist and glue the hand onto another
But I
arm.
like the positioning of it.
Yeah.
And I'm really crappy at connecting stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So to me, the more gross the attachment, the easier it is for me. You know what I mean?
No,
the
that's
larger
cool.
scale of attachment is the easier it is for me. So, I mean, it's the same thing with the Thunderhammer. I probably could have cut the Thunderhammer hand off and stuck it on something else. But if I had to do that and somebody's like, oh, yeah, just pin it. Oh, yeah, just freaking shoot me in the head because I'm not going to be able to do that.
You know,
so,
actually, a cheater way of not pinning it, if you don't want to pin it, is what I do is I'll use the super glue accelerator.
I do that too.
And so as soon as I touch it and I have it in the position that I want it, I'll just dab that super glue accelerator there and I'm done.
That's what I typically do too.
And
but
yeah,
what it does is it makes the connection kind of almost like crystalline, and it makes it a more brittle attachment.
I will agree, the attachment is not quite as durable, but I have yet to have a problem with one of those things.
And
breaking.
I always have a problem with that when I do it, and that's my problem. Is
You gotta stop being so rough on your miniatures.
I must be more ham-fisted. I don't know what it is.
You and me both. I'm
I'm the kind of guy who like will accidentally
me
knock
every
it off
time.
the table. The one
yeah.
model that shouldn't get knocked off the table is the one that I knock off.
But if
the
it's
table,
going to break there, that's where you want it to break too.
I guess. Anyway, I didn't do that.
Okay. Anyway, just offering it.
and
It
so
looks good,
the-
Adon.
I think it looks good. I like his pose.
Yeah, and then
I like the Grey Knight
head
helm.
is from
Yeah.
I think the head is an old Black Templar head.
Is it? Oh, it is.
Yeah, because it's got
You sure it's not a Grey Knight? Oh no, it is a Black Templar
with a little
helmet.
cross in it.
Yep.
Yeah. And I just really like the look of it when I put the pieces together. And so,
Cool.
yeah.
I love it. Love it. All right.
So Josh, what are we doing?
What are we doing? What's the challenge, Josh?
So, being the Specialist Games correspondent,
Here it comes.
straight from Nottingham,
Here we go.
we're all painting ourselves
Okay.
an Adeptus Titanicus unit
Nice.
for the upcoming
Which could be
campaign.
one model.
Could be one model. It could be a unit of knights.
unit
It
entry.
could be a warhound. It could be a squadron of warhounds. It could be
see
two
what-
nemesis warbringers.
Let's see what you're doing here.
Just a unit
Yeah.
entry.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
this is in anticipation of our upcoming campaign
That Jody's going to
that
participate in?
Jody's going to participate in, and it's
With
just
painted
lighting the
models.
fire. We need a little accountability buddies here to get it going. So,
I see
This
what
one's
happened.
I'm in.
I
Copyright
see
Eric
what
Pierce.
happened.
I'm in. I've got it.
and he can't hit me right now because of coronavirus. So.
I'm gonna lick your forehead. How about that? It was the Slaneshi Blitzball team today. Fitting.
All right, I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
Yeah. Fine.
I got a box of this Proferian,
Once
guys.
it starts, though, he'll it's like falling down a hill.
You get one
Yeah.
done, and
Yeah.
you're inspired to do the rest. Right?
Yeah,
That's
man.
what's
Well, and
gonna
if-
I
happen.
cannot wait to go back and finish the rest of my Titans. Now that I've got those 3 that are fully done, like just the oil wash and decals just brought them to life so much from where.
Yeah,
they were. And they've
for
been,
sure.
They've been playable for going on a year now, but
Yeah.
that
And the
that final
decals
step there,
make a
like,
big deal.
It
Yeah.
really brought them to life. And
I'm telling you, like I said in the last show, now that I know how to put the decals on correctly, like I'm like, what else can I slap a decal on? You know?
I'll bring you
yeah,
some
that's-
stuff. I'll bring you some stuff.
What else of mine can I slap a decal on?
oh.
Forehead.
All right, let's talk games played. And actually, I'll go ahead and go first this round. So I got to play. You know what game I got to play? Warhammer 40K.
40,000.
What's that about?
Yeah. So in the far future, played a game of Warhammer 40,000. For those people who don't know why we're laughing about that, there's a thread in our Facebook group
Thanks, Brian.
about how we apparently are falling off of Warhammer 40,000, which quite
Thanks, Brian.
frankly could not be further from the truth. Brian said that is not what he. Anyway, you know, it is Brian's fault.
It is.
It is.
We're blaming Brian.
definitively.
Okay,
Generally.
so I got to play a game finally because I haven't in a long time against Doug Neal. So
yeah.
Doug Neal came over, brought his repaired Imperial Guard tanks and Imperial Guard, who he's got this really cool theme that he is now going with, where this army has been trapped behind the Cicatrix Maledictum, and they're slowly kind of like devolving into like more like not like physically, you know, but like they're becoming less disciplined and
Right.
more like you know, so he's got like one guy that's like riding a tank and has like a chain. It's like holding him on the tank and stuff. And
Oh, cool.
yeah. And so the cool thing,
That's so Doug, too.
but the
That's
cool thing
beautiful,
about
yeah.
that is like, so he's going back and changing
Yeah.
his models.
That's nice.
But the thing is, he doesn't have to do it all at once because
Right.
the
Right.
army is
Slowly devolving.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, that's a really cool idea. So
That's
we're going
neat.
to kind of build some narrative stuff around there. I brought a half Thousand Sons, half Tzeentch Demons list, which is not
You
particularly
evil
good.
man.
Not a particularly good list, to be honest with you. I should have just gone all with Tzeentch Demons this go around, or all with Thousand. Like I should have just committed. But it was a fun list to play. It had a Lord of Change in it. It had a Demon Prince of Tzeentch in it. It had one Sorcerer, Exalted Sorcerer rather, 2 squads of Thousand Sons, Rubric Marines, and then like
30
a ton of pink
30
horrors,
flavors.
right? That split into the blue horrors because I pay those. We've determined that is the go round, and Doug learned,
Yeah.
that those take forever to kill.
Yeah, they do.
Like a bunch of Screamers because Screamers are great. A few Flamers because Flamers are great. The Lord of Change and the Changeling, who I'm kind of thinking of tossing, unfortunately.
Man, talk about the nerf bat. The Changeling went from like the most annoying guy in 40K to like,
to kind of
and also ran.
yeah, and also I think I'm going to just ditch him. It's not really helping so much. I can use those points better elsewhere.
Yep.
So, but anyway, this was my list. I pushed forward pretty hard. Doug set his, whatever they call it, the long range like super guns over in a far corner. Then I'm like, oh god, these things, basilisks, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, I knew where he was going to put them too, because I'm like, the rest of the battle is going to take place over here, and he's going to put those things over here. So I'm totally diverted to go deal with those if I have to deal with them.
Screamers.
I'm just going to ignore him. I ignore him. I'm going to push into the left side of his flank and just like slam into this thing and then just try to mop from left to right. Great plan.
Didn't survive first contact with the
Great
enemy.
plan. The problem was failed charges don't do demon princes any good.
That's true.
And even when you reroll a die and you're like, oh, even worse. Cool. So you're just standing out there in the open getting gunned down. But before all of my plan fell to trash, one of the best things I've ever had happen in a game of 40K happened. I cast Treason of Tzeentch from my Lord of Change onto Doug's Commissar. And this is a really crappy spell because you have to roll an 8 to get it off. Fortunately, I'm at +2 with that Lord of Change, so I need to roll a natural 6. So I get it off, but then I have to roll 2 dice and exceed the Commissar's leadership skill. Lo and behold, I roll an 11, and I exceed his So now I get to take charge of his Commissar, have his Commissar attack any unit, and then assault any unit I want for a round, right? He becomes kind of my...
Right.
So I'm like,
Your
okay,
guy. Yeah.
Commissar is going to use his plasma pistol to shoot that guy. Commissar rolls a 1. Oh, it's
Gets hot.
master crafted or whatever. He gets a reroll. Okay, another 1. So the Commissar, realizing he's getting taken over, chooses to take his own life and blow his own head off with his own plasma pistol.
It is so epic.
Which was so amazing.
I love it.
That was really Tzeentch's whole plan all along. Because that Commissar was going to become, like, he was going
He's the
to go up
next
the
Yarrick.
ranks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stop that in its tracks.
Open the pathway for future change and deceits.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was honestly an epic moment.
Yeah,
Even
that's
Doug
a-
was like,
But
that
the Emperor
was really
protects.
cool.
The Emperor protects.
So not only did I get to use the Commissar, I got to kill the Commissar, which was just fantastic.
Beautiful.
So,
It's the way to miss.
super cinematic. I got to tell you, like, I think Doug and I had a great game. It was a lot of fun. We absolutely had a blast. And then we took a lunch and met a local player to Morgan Hill, Gilroy Morgan Hill. And went and had lunch with him. So we
Oh, the guy who posted recently?
we have a new guy we want to
Yeah.
introduce to the group that Doug and I met. We think he's really nice. And then as I was talking to that guy and we were kind of wrapping up our discussion, I was like, there was another guy that met me at Game Castle and he lives in Gilroy or Morgan Hill and he wanted to get together. And next thing I know, that guy had messaged me and was like, hey, what it was we ran into each other at the Game Castle flea market. And I said, what's your name again? And he told me his name, and I said, okay. He goes, we met before. I was asking you, I live out in Gilroy, and I was like, we were just talking about you yesterday. I said, I couldn't remember who it was that you got to get in touch. And he goes, let me ask you a question. And I go, okay. And he goes, your last name's Tuttle. He goes, do you know a Kyle Tuttle? And I go, yes, my cousin. And he goes, oh, I'm like best friends with the girl he's about to marry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it turns out so I'm like, all right, well, let's just exchange phone numbers since you're about
And
to
I'll
be
see you at the
family.
wedding. Sure.
And so this guy's super nice too. So I'm gonna have him actually come over this coming Saturday, and we were gonna play 40K, but he's not quite he doesn't feel like he's quite ready there yet. Like he's painting stuff up, but he's a big Age of Sigmar player, and I was like, hey, why don't you come over and play Age of Sigmar with me? Because I have yet to use Disciples of Tzeentch. Like, this is their second army book that they've gone through. I never got to play the first one.
Excuse me, sir. They're battle tomes.
Yeah, whatever they call them now. They're
Codex.
not they're codexes. They're fantasy codexes. So he's gonna come over and show me how to kind of work through that this Saturday.
Yeah.
But I think you guys are really gonna like this guy. He's super nice and he's local. They're both super nice guys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right
so
on.
I'll invite him to our game days coming up.
Yeah, there you go. More the merrier.
Because since Adepticon is canceled, we're going to do 3 days of gaming here. So
I think
schedule all that stuff. We got a good plan.
Yeah, I think the plan, I think it's a good plan.
Though I can't believe Jody's going back to work instead of just taking
I
those
know.
days off.
Yeah, I'm
crazy.
sorry. I'm
Where's
not
your
abandoning
priorities?
I'm not abandoning the youth. What a
Okay.
jerk.
Whatever.
This way, your school might be closed anyway. So.
Yeah, yeah, if that happens, I'm all in.
All right. Woohoo.
All right.
COVID.
Jody, what have you been playing since last week?
Yep, cool. Moving right along. No, I haven't got a game in.
By the way, I am playing Necromunda tomorrow against Doug and against Aaron.
Nice.
Sweet.
So
I have
Aaron.
literally played nothing.
All right.
Literally.
yeah, fair enough. It's been a week.
Yeah, it's been a.
Thank you for coming back so fast.
Yeah, I like the drive. It lets me listen to an audiobook.
Done.
Yes, sir.
Wait a second. You just dropped something there. You're listening to
Talon of Force.
Talon of Force. How's it going so far?
So far, so good.
Okay. All right, we'll talk more when you're done. All right. He's hard to impress in
Keeping it close there.
literature-wise.
Yeah.
Okay, done.
He's one of those English snobs.
It's fair enough. No, I think he made his points clear.
Literature.
I know.
You know what? If you like drinking scotch with water, that's okay. That's the way to drink it. If you like reading Black Library books, that's okay. That's the way to enjoy reading. You're reading.
That's right.
I'm just glad you're reading.
I'm not reading. I'm listening to an audiobook. Adon, have you played anything?
Yeah, let's move on to Adon.
For God's sake.
Played some Necromunda.
Nice.
In terms of the things that are in scope of this show.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been participating as much as I wanted to in the campaign, and a lot of reasons, family medical stuff and those kinds of things, but I just wasn't able to get as many games in as I wanted to. And as a result, I've fallen way behind some other folks' gangs. And we don't seem to, well, we'll talk about that later in terms of what the player understands about what they can and can't do has a lot to do with their experience in the game.
For sure.
So anyway, we did our final week of territory grab, and I tried to grab a territory and got my territory handed back to me in a hat in small pieces. And my leader got, taken out of action, and I got another couple guys taken out of action. I'm like, okay, well, this is going really badly, really quickly, so I'm just going to bottle out.
Good choice.
And it's like, okay, so you lose a reputation for that. And now we're going to do the after action effect, and your leader gets a 66.
Which is what?
Dead and gone.
Oh, there it is.
Dead. You know
So-
what you need?
I know what it is. I'm just saying for the audience.
So
That's right. You
So
killed
then
one
the
of those
guy
guys.
the guy who was playing was the arbitrator. Alex felt really, really bad. He goes, oh, it's painted. I'll give you a painted reroll. He's only kind of sort of painted, but thank you, Alex. So then Alex rolled a 65,
Much better.
which also means
You denied your opponent an experience.
you're basically dead.
That's what you did.
That's what
you
you
still
did.
die unless you can pay for it.
So I couldn't pay for it. So then the other guy, the next guy that he rolled it for, got a 63.
This is getting better by the minute.
It's really, really bad. So
So what
yeah,
you're saying is
so-
your experience there has been rough.
it's pretty rough, yeah. And
Stop
that was
bringing knives to gunfights.
that was the game. I think that was the game where I basically every time I attacked,
Yeah.
I either failed the hit roll or I failed the wound roll. Like every single time, to the point where Alex said, "You know what? You need to not use those dice again."
And but you know what I said.
I think he was going to.
All right.
Then we got to the following week. We played. It was the end of the campaign. We played a couple cool scenarios. The first one was this kind of American Ninja Warrior Highlander that can be only one kind of thing, where he put together this huge terrain thing with bridges and stairs and climbing things, and it made a big tower in the center. And somebody had to get up to the top of the tower and hit the button, like they do in American Ninja Warrior, and that was who wins.
It's kind of king of the mountain.
Yeah, and everybody's shooting at you and fighting and charging and knocking you off ladders, and people are falling off. Van Sar guys falling 6 inches onto their head and stuff.
That's great.
And and you can pick any two models you want, any two gangers you want, which is great because some of the guys who played a whole bunch of games had guys who their two models were probably worth about 800 points, and my guys were worth 120 or whatever.
All you got to do is shoot him, get him to fall off that ladder.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
There goes 800 points.
So it was interesting, but
800 points.
and at the top, if you got up to the top, you ended up having to fight a beastman who is based on the dramatis persona Goran Halfhorn.
Yeah, I have that
We
model.
used that
Hunter?
stat.
Yeah.
We used his stats.
Yeah.
For that model. And because my guys got killed off first out of the people who were playing,
You got to play the
I got
beastman.
to play the beastman.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I whiffed on all the rolls and she killed me in one shot.
So I'm hearing one thread that runs through this whole story.
So one of the things I hate about Toxin.
And it's Adon.
Don doesn't roll so well.
Adon doesn't roll well.
So one of the things I hate about Toxin
Yeah.
is that it doesn't matter how many wounds you have.
Uh-huh.
You get one wound with Toxin, and if they roll over your toughness, doesn't matter how many wounds you are.
You
You're
get
done.
an armor save.
Toxic.
Yeah. Okay.
So you have
You get your 5-up armor save.
Well, it's toxic.
Anyway. So, needless to say,
Can't be frustrating. I
He
don't
knocked
like
down,
this
he
guy's
knocked down the
net gun.
beastman. She
What
knocked
net
down the
gun?
beastman.
He doesn't
Coup de
have
grace
one.
him. And the cool thing is that model. Her name is the bad guy from 101 Dalmatians. Cruella. Her name is Cruella, and he painted her with black and white.
Oh, nice.
Black hair with a white thing, and he put a dog pelt jacket on her.
Oh, that's funny.
It's an amazing model. Nice. And so Cruella, coup de grace, Corrin half horn, and hit the button.
Nice.
Go.
All right.
So, but it was a really cool scenario, and yeah,
Cool. And I think we talked about, like, I think the guys from Badcast have done that scenario.
Something similar.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
it's-
something very, very similar.
and I know that he's
Secret
gotten
Neck
stuff
Brother
from
did
them
a similar
from
one.
Sure. That's cool.
Goonhammer. He does a lot of stuff from Goonhammer.
Yeah. So that's where they put
Great
it out.
resource.
Yeah, for sure. And in fact, I have those guys on later for an interview, so
Yeah, that's fantastic.
you're gonna love it. So, Josh.
Yeah, played a couple games. Again, this is spread out over a little while just because I haven't been on in a while.
Sure.
First game I played was against Matt and his newer Death Watch army.
Okay.
His it's the army that he actually busted out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But
We heard Jody talk.
That guy
about
builds
Yeah.
and paints like so fast.
he's pretty prolific.
Going through withdrawals has been like 2 weeks without hardly getting anything done.
So up to this point, I'd actually only played against his Gene Stealer Colt army. So this was
What game were you playing?
we're playing a game of 40K.
What?
Yeah. So it was Necrons against Death Watch. Yeah.
Warhammer 40,000.
Warhammer 40,000. We played a 1,250 point game.
Uh-huh.
And we were playing one of the chapter approved scenarios. Which,
Oh, okay.
It's
From the new chapter?
It was from the new one,
2019?
2019, and it was actually a pretty neat one. There's 4 objectives like in each quarter of the game board, but only troops can score them.
Okay.
And it's a progressive scoring. So if you control more things than your opponent, then you score. Then if you I think 3 or maybe all 4 of them, then you get like double points.
Gotcha.
But it's pretty neat. And at 1250, we each had I think 3 troops choices. So it wasn't actually possible for us to get all 4, which
Right.
it really the objectives of the scenario really dictated kind of how the game played out, and it was pretty neat. And it was actually definitely the closest game me and Matt have had so far because
Cool.
he's not playing 40K on hard mode as a newer player, and he just had more durability being Marines instead of Gene Stealer Colt and things like that.
He's like, what? Save
Well,
throws?
he has a
Armor
couple
saves?
of storm shields in there, so he's like, oh, I got a 3-up invuln save against everything, and he was making a lot of those. So that was
He's
fun.
like, this is great.
It was it was a fun game. And I did.
He was
not,
making
I
his
did
sabers?
not table him.
Okay.
I hate people like that.
Then I played a game of Warhammer 40,000 against Brian Harvey of all people.
I thought he doesn't play that anymore.
No, he does. This was actually
How did you get through the trees to his house?
he came to my house. So,
Oh.
yeah, I don't know.
He must
They
have
both live up
carried
in the
those
mountains.
logs out
They
of the way.
just swing from tree to tree.
Yeah, it's true. Just Tarzaned over.
He has his webbing between his arm and he's just like a flying squirrel. He just jumps.
All right. Sharkadons?
Yeah, this is Sharkadons against a combined force of Drukhari and Harlequins for the narrative campaign that the Splinter Mind podcast is running right now. So it's Imperials against Eldar is kind of the theme of that. This was actually a pretty rough game for me because my dice completely abandoned me. I failed literally every save, every hit, every wound, you name it. I failed it.
Like a Don.
Yeah. Similar. So not a lot happened there, and Brian's army is also super durable. We were realizing like after he put everything down, it's like my army. The Sharkadons are designed for a previous edition of 40K, and that's becoming very apparent to me the more games I play.
You know what
with it.
though? Forge World or GW, the Citadel Studio is about to release those Forge World, and I'm very curious to see if they do Sharkadons, if they do Minotaurs, if they do Red Scorpions.
Red Scorpions, yeah.
Oh man, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
the Red Scorpions are amazing.
The ability in the new codex to pick and choose your own chapter tactics.
Right.
I've got something that works well. It's thematic enough to how that army's designed. That army is just designed for a previous edition of the game. Yeah. So that it'll still have some issues. It just needs to be modernized.
Designed in what you've built.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, for the models that I have. And so this is a 1,500 point game. But realizing my army is designed more, it's a assault army. It's using Marines as an assault army. And it is designed to with a high AP in mind. So I really like to affect people's dice rolls and, have that. And then looking at Brian's army, and every model had an invulnerable save and a feel no pain roll for some sort of feel no pain for maybe half the army. So it was there's some matchup issues. Again, mostly it's just because that army is designed for a previous edition of 40K, the build that I have specifically. So anyways, it was mostly my dice that just completely abandoned me, so that game was actually over pretty quickly. But still fun. It was a great... Brian's one of my favorite opponents because we always have... it's just, good to catch up and hang out with a friend that I don't get to see all that often, even though he actually lives closer to me than anybody else. But I'd say of all of you guys that I play semi-regularly, he and I probably have the best back and forth record of close games.
Right.
And
makes for exciting games.
I'll win one, he wins the next one, and we just kind of go back and forth, and it's always a fun game.
Cool.
They're always close games, which is good. I ran our buddy Cliff in Santa Cruz through an Adeptus Titanicus learning game. I cannot talk today.
It's a bad day for it.
Yeah. He bought in, so he's actually purchased the newer starter set, and he was in the process of building already. So I wanted to run him through. We'd actually had it this plan months and months ago, but something canceled. I think he got sick.
And do you like the setup of the new starter set?
I think it's a great way to start the game, and it's a good expansion too.
Yeah.
If you already have existing models, those models are still going to be super useful with 2 Reavers, 2 Warhounds, and 2 Cerastus Knights. Plus, the rulebook is updated while the errata changes that they made, so it's same rules, but they're at least clarified. All the clarifications that they made are incorporated in that book, so it's a good buy, and you can always, if you are doubling down on templates and things like that, you can always pass those on to somebody else who doesn't have them yet. Me and AJ played a game of Adeptus Titanicus 1250.
Nice.
This was kind of in practice in prep for Adepticon, because we were partners in the narrative event that we're going to be participating in. So he just wanted a refresher because it was only his second game, so he wanted to kind of get a refresh and just get some more experience in him. Where I've played many games now. It was a super fun game, and both these games we basically kind of did. First turn we'll do basic rules, and then from second turn on we're going to go into advanced rules, and that's really all people need for learning the game or jumping in. And then I'll just kind of combine all my Necromunda games into one. But I did just a ton of practice games. Being the arbiter of this campaign, I really wanted to have the system down, and it had been a while since I'd played Necromunda, so I really wanted to get the ins and outs and do the full pre and post battle sequences and everything that's involved in actually playing a game, but also just have a good foundation of what's involved in the game itself, but also everything that is going to somehow correlate to campaign.
Gotcha. Smart.
Yeah.
Get prepped for it.
Played a bunch of games in preparation for that. Played 2 campaign games on our campaign game day, where we're actually doing our territory grab, and then played 2 skirmish games, one against Jody and one against Matt.
Perfect.
Where I had guys permanently die and inspire me to build a rogue game. So that's me.
All right. Well, let's do this. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about first section about Necromunda Campaigns. Then we'll go into an interview with Dan and Campbell from the 40K Badcast. Talk a little bit Necromunda with those guys as well.
Yeah.
Then we'll come back and close out our Necromunda coverage. And then we'll close out the show. So we will be right back.
Hey guys, I'm Caleb.
And this is Kat.
And we are CK Studios. We want to invite you and your friends to come paint with us at one of our exciting and fun-filled airbrush and hobby weekenders. Our weekend workshops are 2 days of intense hands-on training, working directly with and learning from some of the top gaming artists in the industry.
Whether you're brand new to miniature painting or an experienced veteran that wants to up your game, CK Studios has the workshop for you. Our workshops cover everything from learning the basics and building confidence in airbrushing, all the way up to creating that centerpiece model for your army or display case.
For more class info and our upcoming schedule, you can find us on Facebook at CK Studios Come Paint With Us, or register directly at ckstudios.bigcartel.com.
If you can't find a class near you, that's okay. Just contact us and we'll bring a workshop to you.
All right, we are back, and we're going to launch the main topic now, which is Necromunda Campaigns, of which there's several different flavors of Necromunda Campaigns that exist currently. And I think that's one of the things, like the reason I wanted to do an episode about this was we had done a Necromunda versus Kill Team thing to kind of compare the two.
Right.
But this is really the first time I've kind of really been playing actual Necromunda and in a campaign, which is really supposed to be the strong point.
It's the way to play
It is the way to play it.
Of Necromunda. And so as the product line continues starring in the role of Jeff Hummel today will be Don Tejada. As the game continues to grow, I think we will see even more types of ways to campaign it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that kind of thing. There is a fantastic amount of supplementary material that has been added to Necromunda. It continues to get additions as well in White Dwarf, but also just the books that are coming out, incredibly high quality.
Yeah.
The layouts, the artwork, the condition of the book, like everything is really
They're definitely Forge World products.
Yeah. I think, I on that note, I think they're going to end up dropping that Forge World moniker pretty soon. It's a guess. It's a guess on my part that it's kind of because it's not even called that anymore. It's just called the Specialist Game Studio.
Right.
So I think inevitably that's probably going to go.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I totally know what you mean. I have a strong suspicion this is Paul Rudge's group doing the layout and everything there. So
before we dive any further into the campaign stuff, it occurs to me like as an overview point, and Josh, I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on this and everybody's, is it almost feels like in board gaming, they call them like sandbox games, like where you can kind of do whatever you want. It's just a matter of determining what do you want to do. And the problems that come with a sandbox game are always the same of, well, then how do I know what all my options are?
Right.
The upside is I have the giant
Unlimited
deluxe
options.
salad bar of options.
In video
it's
games,
everything.
it's like Skyrim.
Sure.
Yeah.
Everything is like yes and that there's, and I feel like that is both in terms of Necromunda campaign play or just Necromunda play in a campaign system, every direction you look, that's what it's going to be. That if it's just one more thing to pick from, which options do you want?
Sure.
How do you
where
want
do I
it?
start when there's so many options?
And that's the
part of
problem, right?
Yeah.
Is it can be very, very overwhelming. Is that fair?
I mean, I think as we go through the different types of campaigns, there's a ton of similarity, and there's similar mechanics that you're going to use in each of these campaign types.
Okay.
And there's very, very similar actually strengths and weaknesses to each of the campaign types, because they all kind of fundamentally have a core campaign mechanic.
Okay.
And then it's more of a flavor to taste versus add this module on, add this module on, add this module on.
Okay.
In my experience.
Cool.
Yeah,
Now,
I
were
think-
you talking specifically campaigns, or were you talking the game in general? Because as a new player to the game, I found it a little overwhelming initially. Again, I'm not, as we talked about with Adeptus Titanicus, I'm not the kind of guy that can like read the rule book and then just be like, boom, got it, let's play. Like I need to go through it a bit, and it really helps me if somebody else knows what they're doing and then walks me through it, and then I'm like, totally got it.
Right. I think yes, and much like the game, yes, and so yes, from a play standpoint, initially, if you're diving into a campaign and you're not experienced with Necromunda, I don't feel weird at all that that's even debatable. If you're gonna feel overwhelmed at first,
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a
I
million
think
things.
Don could probably
Very
speak
fair.
to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You know. But I feel like even as we get into the later supplements, and we'll talk about the Book of Ruin and some of the other later supplements, where they're not laying out new campaign systems, but new seasonings.
There's new interactions.
Right.
Yeah, that it's starting to feel that way even with the campaigns. That it's yes and
Yeah.
and I don't mean it as a knock. It's just that's a reality. Like when you go to the unlimited salad bar, your stomach's only going to get so many trips, and when you have unlimited rule set, man,
Well,
where do you start?
But I think that Josh makes a good point in that yes, but it is still very well organized on the campaign side.
Cool.
That is one of the positives of it, is it's extremely flexible, but you still have a good sense of organization on the campaign side. And when you put all that stuff together, it ends up being a super immersive environment. It can be.
No questioning about that.
Depending on how you handle it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the other thing I was going to say before we jump into the campaign stuff, do we want to kind of do a 50,000-foot view of what Necromunda is?
No,
a
I
little
don't
bit of
think
the
so.
background. No?
Jump
I
to
don't
the
really
old
think so.
episode. We did
Go
that.
to the old episode. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've covered that. if you're interested, go look up our Necromunda versus Kill Team episode where we talk a lot about the lore and all that kind of stuff behind it.
Awesome.
To answer Jody's question directly, I feel like a lot of the supplemental books that are out there are adding flavor to specific gangs, and some of these are newer gangs that have been added. They're not the standard kind of classic house gangs. So what these supplements are doing is they're adding ways of incorporating those non-standard house gangs more completely into the existing campaign structures, less than it's just kind of a standalone separate module that you're adding on there.
Cool.
Got it.
Right on. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
All right. So here's where I felt I wanted to kind of start. When a group of us are going to play in a Necromunda campaign, somebody has to be the organizer, and more so than I feel. Like, hey, I'm going to run this 40K campaign. This is much more of a almost hybrid kind of DM organizer kind of role. Now, that person can still play in the game.
Yeah,
There's no reason they can't, but they have a greater role. And this role is called the arbitrator. And so, Josh, you are the arbitrator of our campaign.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. Let me ask you a few questions about that. Like, first off, what do you see the role of the arbitrator being?
So the arbitrator has a couple of different roles. The big picture role of the arbitrator is just to set up the framework of the campaign. You're either individually or with the group choosing which of the various campaigns you are going to be playing in, whether that's a Dominion campaign, an Uprising campaign, a Law and Misrule campaign, as we're going to go into those in more detail.
Right.
But you're choosing the framework of which campaign you're going to put the group in. Again, either you're just making that executive decision, or as a group, you guys come together and be like, "Oh, let's check out this one. We haven't done this type before."
I'm a big fan of just making the executive decision.
Yeah, which is what I did.
It just speeds things along.
Yeah.
As soon as you start, hey, let me throw a poll up.
Right.
Oh God, just do it.
Designed by committee and
Yeah.
with a camel, whatever it is.
That's right.
Right.
So okay, the first step is just figuring out what type of campaign you're running. Second step is actually figuring out who's in your group, what players are there, who can commit to the campaign. A big point to emphasize in Necromunda is you really need players to commit to the campaigns, because no matter what type of campaign you're playing, there's some sort of territory involved, some sort of resource that the gangs are fighting over, and you really need everybody to be participating and have availability of these the resources that are up for grabs. Otherwise, the campaign can very easily peter out. Or if 2 players are playing and the other 6 are just kind of sitting around occasionally playing, those 2 guys that are playing very often are just going to run away with things, because gangs are getting experience, gangers are getting promoted, you're getting equipment, and yada, yada, yada. Like there's a lot of reasons that you kind of want everybody to stay on as even of a playing field as possible, because the game itself isn't necessarily balanced.
Yeah, I think this is a theme that we may come back to around a lot, especially depending on how you organize the campaign. And because ours was done at a store, as part of a store campaign, as opposed to a group of friends. And in higher ed, we call it melt, when you have people who commit to your college and then they don't show up and enroll. They call it, freshman melt.
Yep.
Well, you have player melt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it can really, really hurt your campaign.
I like that term, actually. That works really well.
Yeah. Because especially, like, you might do a first game day and everybody's there. They've got their
course,
stuff.
because
And they're
everybody's
ready
excited.
to go.
Yeah.
And then it melts off badly.
Yeah.
It can really hurt you. And so I want to come back to that as we go through these things, because it raises its head in some of these other areas that we talk about later.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So a big part of that and way to mitigate that as the arbitrator is to set your campaign dates. You're going to have a start date. You're going to have an end date. If you're doing like we're doing a monthly game day where all the major challenge games are happening on these game days, and then it's skirmish games to, flavor to taste, play as many skirmish games as you want on the side. But those campaign games, you have to commit to be there. Otherwise the campaign kind of falls apart.
Right.
Great way to do it.
Yeah. So
we were really harsh about, initially I think we had like 15 people that were interested in this campaign.
Yeah.
And then we were like, guys, look at yourselves honestly and say, are you going to be there every month?
You need the serious commitment. Otherwise,
please don't.
Because it's a campaign system, it's still fun for one-off games, but where Necromunda comes to life is in a progressive campaign where everything's happening and guys are getting experience and doing all that. You really need everybody again committed and on that same page, so that everybody is kind of moving along at a similar pace.
So getting the framework put together, organizing the players to play and letting them know the parameters under which they're playing.
Setting dates.
Yeah. You're kind of the organizer.
It's all the logistics.
Okay.
It's all the behind the scenes logistics. You after games, you're tracking all the statistics because as we'll go through in more detail, each campaign type is there's never ever one just all out winner or loser of the campaign.
Right.
There's different metrics that you're tracking against that they're called triumphs that each player is going to submit the statistics that they've been collecting and doing throughout the course of the campaign.
Sure.
The entirety, start to finish, of the campaign. And then you're kind of earning credit towards these various triumphs. And then certain players, you're going to have multiple winners in multiple across the various categories.
Got it.
So there's not just one campaign winner. It's, I did this thing the best out of the campaign group, and et cetera.
We had people got certificates for most wins or most kills or most most territories owned.
It's kind of cool.
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Depending which campaign you play, those triumphs are specified of what statistics, what metrics you're actually tracking to kind of go against those. And you could always do your own, obviously, but
most glorious death.
Yeah.
When I talked to Dan and Campbell, as you heard later, I asked them about house rules.
Yes.
And this seems like a system that, much like the early days of RPGs and stuff, even today, hey, this is what I allow in my campaign. Like these are the rules I'm allowing, or I've changed this rule.
Very much so.
And it seems like this is kind of
I
fertile ground for that.
Actually, I have to give a shout out to Dan because I reached out to Dan specifically before kicking off our campaign to just get some advice because this is the first time I've ever arbitrated Necromunda.
Yeah.
And he is a much more experienced player and is right now, maybe they've wrapped up by now, but they're running their Law and Misrule campaign. Even though that's a different campaign type than what we're doing because we're doing a Dominion campaign, I was able to kind of take a good framework, a basis of what he's doing and apply that towards our group and our campaign and things like that. So thanks, Dan.
It can even be in one-off games like the one we did with the tower. You took a random tactics card, but he said up front, no Necroquake, no one that turns all the lights out. Mm-hmm. No. Yes, it's a random card you might draw, but no, you can't do that.
Makes sense. Yep. If you see something that's out of balance, you do this with Blitzbowl all the time, right?
Yeah, our group.
Yes.
Yeah, we really, really DIY'd it. I think my favorite example of this is crits and fumbles in Dungeons and Dragons is a house rule. It didn't show up in an edition until I think the latest edition as an actual really that's the rule.
Right.
It was just this house rule, which is this funny
Actually, I think it was in 3 and 3.5.
3 and 3.5. But it wasn't there.
But
initially,
it wasn't original.
And everybody did it. And it was
right.
no, it's just how you do it. So this arbitrator.
And
arbitrator
that's
call.
one of the things that's cool about Necromunda also is over the years but when it wasn't being 100% supported by the company, the fans kept it going.
Yeah.
And they had a living rule book, and a lot of these house rule things end up being basically canon.
Very much like Blood Bowl.
Yeah. Very much like Blood
Bowl. There's a passionate following for it. So when they re-released it, the new models are just amazing. Everything's amazing about it. Yeah. So let's talk about one last point I want to make before we start talking about the Dominion campaign is it's interesting, and we were discussing this before we were recording, how there's rules spread out through all the books. And we were just talking about Dungeons and Dragons and how there weren't critical hits. And it very much feels like a modernized version of like a 90s game, 80s, 90s game.
Intensely.
Yeah. Like it's clearly learned from some of the things that weren't working. It's applied new philosophies around game design, yet at its core, it's still very crunchy, which 80s and 90s role-playing games and games were known for.
Yeah.
Like, this is a crunch game.
It's got crunch. It's got multiple charts you're rolling on for different things.
Yes.
But it's also streamlined at the same time.
But it also plays very smooth, surprisingly
the basic game.
Which I think it's a beautiful marriage of staying true to the classic feel of the game.
Yes.
But also modernizing it and streamlining it.
I think what they've learned is all of that crunch happens off game board.
Right.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, when you're moving models on during the game, it's pretty simple actually.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I dare say less complicated than a 40K game
in some ways.
Yeah. Whereas all the crunch and tables and charts and roll and then roll again and then roll again and okay, now add this. Okay, now roll again.
That's all the fun paperwork.
That's all the fun paperwork that's off game board.
That's right. That's a forbidden item. You can't have that one.
I think it's fun.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's a
fun
really
paperwork.
exciting part of the campaign.
Well, and if you're an RPG player, for sure.
So let's talk the Dominion campaign.
Yeah.
This is the campaign that comes from the basic book that you basic quote unquote. It's a thick basic.
The core rule book.
Yeah.
The core rule book. Let's talk a little bit about what's the point of the Dominion campaign. Like, how does this thing work? So what's my objective?
So the Dominion campaign, the best way I can describe it is it's a mapless map campaign.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily have a map on the board that you're fighting over territories, but you are fighting over territories. So there's 3 phases to a Dominion campaign. The first phase, you're going out and you're actually trying to capture territories.
Okay.
Nobody has control of any territories except for you basically have your home base, which depending on your gang, if you're the enforcers, you have your precinct, and everybody else has
kind of their gang hideout.
Yeah, it's your gang hideout basically. And these are territories you can't lose. They're going to guarantee you income every time you collect income. So anyways, you have those territories, and then everything else, the arbitrator has put a deck of available territories together, which is built upon the number of players participating and which houses are participating in the campaign.
Right. Cool.
And this is where it comes back to player melt.
Yeah, yes.
Because if you assemble a deck of territories
with Goliath in it and no Goliath, and the Goliath player drops out, you got a problem.
Or the bigger issue is there's just extra territories floating around that now it's going to take you longer to play enough games to get those territories controlled.
Got it.
Since players have
dropped. And the other problem that comes up with that is if you don't control up front the gangs that are involved.
Yeah.
If you just let people pick whatever gang they want, and you end up with 6 enforcer gangs because they were one of the ones in the box set, that can also set up.
Is that a problem?
That can set up some.
If it's 6 enforcer gangs and then 1 Cawdor gang, then there's less competition for the unique Cawdor territories where they can just grab them. Actually, funny enough, our campaign has that hiccup a little bit where there's the Cawdor gang.
Doug's actually playing Cawdor, and then Jody
I'm playing a Helot cult, and then Matt's playing a Gene Stealer cult. They all use the Cawdor territories.
Yeah.
So we're all duking it out against each other, whereas you're the only Goliath player.
Bill's also a Goliath
player.
So
Bill and I
are competition there for.
But I think one of the groups doesn't have I don't know who it is, but I feel like somebody doesn't have. Maybe that's not true.
Well, like in ours,
but that's where it creates a problem.
I'm the only block player, so there's potential that I'm coming up front there. But except I lost my first game and Doug got that territory. So the interesting thing about that though is like we don't have any Escher. There's no Escher gangs.
Right.
There's no Orlok gangs in our house right now. Anthony's also the only Vansar player, so he doesn't have any competition for Vansar specific territories. But because there are no Escher or Orloks, those territories aren't in our campaign right now.
You've removed them from the deck.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You can customize it. But like I think we had 6 or 7 enforcers, and then I don't remember ever seeing one actually played.
Right.
Right. They had melted
enforcers away. Enforcers specifically play very differently in a Dominion campaign. Right. They don't claim territories. Anytime you challenge an enforcer player, that you actually fight at the precinct if you're fighting there, and nobody gains a territory. The enforcer player, if they win, they get to give a territory to whoever they want. Basically, they've taken control of this area and they're giving it to another gang on the side. So having 6 enforcers, I think, is going to be more problematic compared to 3 counter players.
Right.
Interesting.
Because one of the things they specifically do is kind of break the framework of how a gang works.
So you were talking 3 phases. First phase, occupation phase. We're fighting for control of the available territories. Territories in the deck, which you're deciding in advance. We're going to fight for this territory.
Correct. Yeah. So each one player will be the challenger, and they're going to challenge another player based upon its first game. We did the random pairing, and then each game after that is the lower gang rating players get to challenge whichever player they want over a territory, and they get to choose the territory. And all the territories being fought over in this first round are unoccupied, so everything's up for grabs.
Right,
that whole deck is, and
it should be said as a player, and this is where it starts to get already crunchy. Like, you might want to look at these territories before you become a challenger, because you're going to want to choose certain things. So there is
the gambling den.
There's a certain level of knowledge that you're going to need to have
the
going into
quote homework that I sent out to everybody that nobody
reads.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, I was telling my wife about it.
Any
afterwards.
campaign
It's like, Jody, just give me
ever.
that like understanding, cold, dead-eye look, and be like, "Oh, I didn't do the reading, huh?" Like,
No, I had no intention of doing the reading.
So yeah, Eddie, going into a Dominion campaign or any of these campaigns, is you'll learn more. It's a good idea to have an idea of what these territories are going to do ahead of time that are available, just so you can make an informed choice of what territories you want to fight over. The other thing as an arbitrator that I did was I made actual cards for each territory.
Right.
And the handy thing about having these cards is when you're playing a game, you can look at the card right there and see what benefits are gained from that card, but also from owning that territory. You can also, when collecting income, you have, hey, these are the 3 territories that I have. I've got 3 cards right here. It's really easy to figure out how much income I'm going to make right now.
Fantastic.
Instead of looking through the book and being like, okay, I've got one of these, one of these, one of these, and that's spread out through 20 pages of the book. Instead, you just have an easy reference card. So I just took that upon myself to make it easier for the players as a player aid.
And for arbitrators, I think for the campaigns, this is a good argument also for the campaign day thing, because you can actually do like a little briefing for folks who are not going to do the reading.
Yep.
Yep.
You can kind of give them an overview of stuff and kind of lead them kind of by the hand through some of this stuff.
Sure.
And explain to them what those cards mean and what they do.
So, okay, now we've played games, we've fought over territories. Now comes phase 2, which is downtime.
So the end of that first phase is going to end either at a set date or once all the territories have been claimed.
Got it.
And the way I set up our campaign is that it's ideally on our second game day, every territory should be claimed by that point because of the number of players that we have, the number of games we're aiming to play in a game day, and the number of territories available. Yeah. So once everything has been claimed, or the time limit is reached, you're going to go into the next phase, which is downtime, and this is basically just a week off. Everybody who is in recovery gets to come back onto the roster. If guys that you have been captured by other gangs, they come back to you, and you don't have to pay a ransom for them or try and attempt a rescue mission, anything like that. They just come back to you. The other thing that's common in downtime phases are just they're fun games. They're silly games. You're not fighting over territories or anything, but it's a big multiplayer game. You're hunting an amble, or you're doing.
This is where you can let your imagination kind of run.
Yeah, as the arbitrator, this
right?
is kind of the sweet spot of like, oh, okay, I've just got this kind of crazy off the wall scenario, or maybe it's a very, very seriously thought out one. But either way, it's something that you really get to kind of come up with these fun scenarios for players to participate. Completely optional for those players to participate in them or not. You're not gaining any kind of huge territory bonus or anything for participating, but you're getting experience, you're potentially getting paid, and you're having a good time.
Got it.
Yeah, amble hunt could be a fun one too.
It's a low pressure, fun time for everybody to basically.
These are the games I hear most people talk about.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
because through the course of the campaign, there's kind of a set scenario list that you're rolling off to see what you're playing on, or you're thematically choosing one of the kind of standard book missions, of which there's several. I think 12 kind of standard missions, depending if you're doing a Sector Mechanicus or a
Zone Mortalis.
Zone Mortalis.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that plays for how long before we get to the takeover phase?
Downtime is generally it's a week, but depending on how the campaign's formatted and your time frame and the regularity of which your group is able to get together and play, it's flexible, but that should be determined ahead of time.
Okay.
The other thing every gang gets in downtime is you get 250 credits to just kind of infuse new life in your gang. So you get to recruit new bodies. Everybody recovers. If you have Juves that have advanced 5 times on the chart, they actually get promoted to the champion, so they get to go on the extra special chart, and become champions, which is pretty neat. Because
did y'all do a downtime game day yet for your campaign?
Well, we haven't got to downtime yet.
Yeah, we paused. We paused because of Adepticon.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Game on.
Now it's game back on.
Now it's back on. Yeah.
We actually haven't got all the territories dealt out yet.
Oh, okay, cool.
So in this next game day, which
is
hopefully happening in about 2 weeks now, should be the end of our occupation phase.
phase,
and then we'll go into downtime. Yep.
And then the takeover phase begins.
Takeover phase. So this is all territories are now distributed that are up for grabs. And what this is now you are directly challenging another gang for a territory that they have in their possession.
You're trying to take over.
You're trying to take territory that they have claimed in the occupation phase. So gangs are going head to head. It gets similar. You're going to pick a gang. You're going to challenge them. And you're going to pick what territory you want to fight over. The gang you're challenging gets bonuses because you're actually trying to take over a territory from them directly.
Right.
And then play a game and fun ensues.
Okay. So we've talked about the territories. There's a wide variety of territories. They offer different benefits based on the ones you have. Some are more beneficial to your force because they're specific to Goliath.
So every territory has something called a boon, and it's basically what that territory does for you for having possession of it. And then there's enhanced boons, which are the gang-specific ones. So anybody who has
gets the boon.
Goliath-specific territory gets the boon, but the Goliaths get the enhanced boon in addition,
which is usually like a little
something
more
better.
edge.
You're getting more money, you're getting more reputation, whatever it may be.
Got it. And so we talked about the fixed number of campaigns, fixed number of territories. You said there's 2 campaign variants. There's the Old Kingdom and Into the Unknown. What are the differences between these?
Yeah, so the Old Kingdom is you're going to kind of just randomly or less randomly distribute all of the territories off the bat. So instead of having an occupation phase, you're essentially having 2 takeover phases.
Got it.
So you can thematically distribute territories off the bat. So gangs have kind of gang-specific territories that make sense to what they're playing.
This makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's Old Kingdom because they've already established themselves in their territories.
Already established sector of the hive.
Got it.
And then you guys are going head to head and just trying. Basically, it's a gang takeover. It's a territory.
And you would kind of make, like you were saying, make sure that each gang has a territory that's specific to them.
Ideally,
so they can get that boon.
Yeah. So the thing about Necromunda and narrative nature of it, that the game itself, like the game play on the table, has some really cinematic, thematic, narrative moments to it, but it's not an over narratively played out game on the table.
Right.
What really makes it narrative is how the games string together, and it is all that fun paperwork that you really get to see the advancement of your guys and things that have happened to them in previous games are going to affect future games. So it's super narrative in that sense.
Yeah.
But
and so then Into the Unknown is the one we're playing, which is your kind of
we're not. So Into the Unknown, we're playing just the standard vanilla,
the normal one, right?
Dominion right now. What Into the Unknown is you make a challenge, and you have no idea what territory you're going to fight over.
Oh, interesting.
So you guys are. It's basically there was a subsector of a hive that opened up. There was a
wall collapse, exposing
and
another
exposed this new area.
Okay.
And gangs are just going in. They're going head to head fighting over these territories, but you have no idea what you get until you get there.
How interesting. Okay.
Which is it's a fun little variant.
But both of these are basically Dominion campaigns. They're just variations of
It's
those.
a different territory distribution of a Dominion campaign.
And what's interesting about the as you were talking about the narrative portion that happens like in between the games. Right. One of the things that Alex did in ours is that he did a weekly like newsletter. Of the things that happened and the cool things that were going on and what was happening in the different territories, and it kind of gave it much more of a, it's almost like the regimental standard, kind of thing. You're getting more of a
and if you have
feel for it.
A really fixed schedule, I think that's something I've run a lot of Blood Bowl campaigns over the years, and that's something I always do is that after there's a game cycle, the end of that cycle, you do a little write up, and you're right, it adds a ton. And this is where, for those of you who like role playing, this is where that you can really stretch those kind of role playing muscles a little bit. That, and then like Josh was saying, in the downtime, that's a chance. If you are the would-be game designer, this is your chance to really to fiddle with the game design. And I think that's why you hear about those missions so much is they let you really stretch it. I think it's interesting that the Arbiter gets to kind of, depending on what their skills are, which part of the job they're going to really embrace. The one you have to have is some organizational skills, but then after that, are you more of a game designer? Are you more of a good at rah-rah cheering up people? Are you more of a storyteller? Like any of those skills are going to kind of really have a chance to shine.
I don't know if you guys remember the little spiel of like that the enforcers had basically come into the area and booted everybody out, which is why come downtime, there's actually going to be a really fun scenario I've already designed that is specifically, it's enforcer focused.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. So that'll kind of just tie into the greater narrative. The other thing I wanted to point out too, like that the letter point is Yak Tribe, which we'll talk about more because it deserves its own little call out for it.
Yeah.
But there's a cool feature in there that I don't know if you guys have gone in yet, but basically any game that you guys have sent me the information for of what was played, what territory it was fought over,
I owe you my
what the
information.
results have happened. You can actually go in there and you can see a little kind of, it'll actually populate a map of who has what territories and things like that. But every game that I've put in there, there's a little just kind of quick synopsis
Summary.
of which gangs fought, what was the outcome, any kind of highlights that we're
cool.
given in that. So
very cool.
That kind of fits the role for me because I'm less of a storyteller of what happened in this last round.
And those kinds of things I think also are motivating for folks, depending on what, like you were saying, what punches your buttons.
Yeah.
What are the things that motivate you? Oh, I really want to be in the write-up next week.
Yeah.
I want to do something really cool.
Oh, that's true. That's true. So I may have jumped the gun at this at the beginning, but kind of what's the objective of the campaign? We touched on the fact there's not like a single winner.
Right.
Instead, there's several metrics.
Yeah, so this is going to touch on those triumphs I was talking about. That you want to win games, you want to build reputation, you want to gain wealth, you want to eliminate enemies, and these kinds of things are actually all kind of represented in these triumphs.
So it's not it's more like life. Like you don't necessarily win, right? You win at different things.
You just do better than other people in certain areas.
It's certain areas.
Yeah. So Dominion specific, we can run through real quick. There's the Dominator, who's the player who claims the most territories at the end of the campaign.
Okay.
There's the Slaughterer, who's the player who's taken the most enemies out of action across the entire campaign.
Okay.
There's the Creditor, who's the player with the largest amount of wealth at the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
Is that accrued wealth, like
it's
in
credits,
your pile?
gang rating, stash,
Spent.
everything.
So
value.
okay,
It's
spent
just
as
value.
well. Okay.
Everything your gang's worth.
Okay.
Value. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Warmonger, it's the players who's fought the most battles across the entire campaign, including skirmish games, downtime, etc.
Yeah.
Everything there. The Power Broker is the player with the highest reputation at the end of the campaign.
Okay.
His reputation matters and lets you do a lot of different things of how you get to challenge people, or reputation actually affects how many hanger-ons and like brutes and things like that you can hire.
Okay.
And the more popular your gang is, the bigger the reputation is, the more of these
can
extra
hire.
things you can bring in that
Right.
are beyond just your standard house list. Then there's the Peacemaker, which is enforcer specific. And if there is a tie for the Dominator, if no one player has the most territories, then the enforcer player of the campaign gets awarded the Peacemaker.
Got it.
And that no one gang was kind of the winner in that area, so the law
And
was
so-
able to keep
law
things-
wins by default.
keep their lead on.
And
lit
so
on.
is it's the
man keeping you down.
so then is the winner of the game campaign really the person with the most triumphs, or does it not really matter?
There's not going to be one overall
Winner.
You
There
could
could
think of
be.
it that
You could
way.
look at it that
yeah,
way.
in that if one person has 3 or 4 of these triumphs, like
Yeah.
they've obviously done quite well, but really it's just those individual things that you've achieved at within those triumphs.
I love this narratively because, I mean, let's not forget that the story here is that you've got gangs duking it out in the Underhive.
Right.
Well, they're all coexisting.
Right.
Right. So what is a gang known as? Well, this gang dominates. This gang is a bunch of slaughterers. This one, these guys are the guys that you get credit from. These are the ones that you...
These are the ones you have to ask permission to do anything
right, yeah.
because they're
You know,
so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are the warmongers. These guys are always starting problems. You know, that there's this idea of these titles effectively being labeled onto these
absolutely.
gangs. You know, that narratively I like that a lot of. They'll still all coexist.
The gangs
but how are they
themselves have some strengths and weaknesses
For sure.
inherent to how those gangs
Right.
play, and that can also tie into some of these triumphs specifically.
And one of the cool things about game days, if you were to do a lot of things that are actually on a game day, is that gives the arbitrator a chance to also make up their own things. Like I was talking about, I made a joke about it before, but you can do like the most glorious death, right?
Sure.
So something happens on one of the tables and everybody's like, oh my gosh, like the commissar shooting himself in the head with a plasma pistol,
Right.
right? That's the kind of thing where an
That's 40K.
I know, but the example
We don't
of
play that anymore.
the arbitrator can make up a special award, right, for
Sure.
something like that. We had a guy
Absolutely.
who, I can't remember what kind of gang he has, but he had a harpoon gun,
Yeah.
right? Ended up losing a leg. So now he's a peg leg guy with a harpoon gun. It's like a
beautiful.
freaking pirate,
He's a
right?
pirate.
And so Rob's like he's desperately trying to get a bionic leg for his peg leg guy, right? And he just can't roll enough credits for it. So
All right. So let's move ahead here because I want to keep us on track. The Dominion campaign. So what are the strengths of this campaign, this style of campaign?
Yeah, it's it's the default,
The core.
It's the vanilla. I guess
Right.
it's if you have the understanding of how this campaign works, you're going to understand how all the other campaign variants and types work. So
Gotcha.
it's straightforward. It's familiar. It's essentially, like I said, it's a mapless map campaign. You've got these territories. You're trying to claim them, and anybody who's played a map campaign before, at least knows this idea. And if you don't, it's a pretty easy.
The cool thing is,
and there's tools for it.
Yeah,
you could even do like, if you were so inclined, you could draw a map.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
And
yeah.
call those territories, and then but it kind of subverts the map by just using the cards.
Right.
Well, but like you were saying, there are tools out there.
Oh, sure.
Community has created that will draw the map for you.
Yak Tribe has a nice visual representation of all the
Yeah.
territories
Love
and
it.
control of our various gangs right now. So
Love it.
just at a glance, and it's color coordinated, because if you guys didn't assign a color to your gang, I went and assigned a color to you after the fact. So each gang's territories are.
Why do I gotta be Mr. Pink?
Yeah, I was going to say you're pink, Carl.
Muscle Boys in pink. Also, if you played Necromunda, Necro 90s, right?
Necro 90s.
If you played the OG version of this, this is going to feel very familiar
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
This is largely how it ran. And again, smart design now, though, of it is a lot cleaner than it was. Josh made us really awesome cards. And by the way, those are awesome. I don't think I really appreciated that until we were sitting here, just how much nicer that is. But I mean, you could still make a master list to work from. And that's exactly what they had in the 90s.
Yep.
It's not as nice, but it works. And it's like you said, straightforward.
All
it's
the
familiar.
territories are listed in descriptions in the book and things like that. I do a lot
Super
of graphic
easy.
design
Right,
on the side,
right.
so
There you
it's
go.
a skill that I had, and it's just a nice campaign.
And then
aid.
what are the limitations of this campaign?
The big thing,
We kinda
which
touched
is,
on these
which is
things.
going to be true of all of these campaign types. Really, it's really the scheduling is the big thing. Like, you need people getting these challenge games in, otherwise you're not going to meet the timelines. And then if you guys aren't able to get your Dominion phase or the occupation phase done in
Going,
like 2
yeah.
or 3 kind of challenge rounds,
It's gonna peter out.
the campaign's going to peter out. People are going to lose interest. Not enough is happening. It's really because on those campaign days, you're collecting income, you're getting paid, you're able to add things to the gang. You get the new shiny stuff. You get to go and check out the black market and get new cool equipment. Where in the skirmish games, actually, as we've found, actually, is because we're not collecting income on skirmish games right now, so players aren't just kind of running off on the side of the campaign and just racking up a ton of money and running away with the campaign. Playing the skirmish games gets you good experience, so you can kind of up your guys in skills and things like that. But you're not collecting
You're not
income.
getting
You're not
super
just
rich,
getting a ton of gear. You're not getting all this exotic loot that nobody else has. And
during our game days, it's double experience.
Yeah, and I think this is a note that we made out of our campaign as well, is that this idea of centralized versus decentralized games, right? I mean, if it's great to be able to say, okay, for the next week, get your games in. We're going to meet again on next Monday is the deadline for turning in games, but there's no levers, there's no leverage to get people to actually do those games,
Right.
And you see people saying, "Oh, who can get in tomorrow?" And there's crickets, right? And you don't really get it to happen. And that's why I really like the idea of the centralized games, right?
Yeah,
And having
that's
that
true. It's two
centralized-
different
having
ways
a
of
game
approaching
day.
it. Yeah.
And you have a much better chance of having a really successful campaign if you can pull off that commitment to have those centralized
That's why
days.
it's so important to have people committed there.
Yes.
Because if they're not there, they're not collecting territories, they're not getting paid, and they're not getting double experience. So those players are going to fall behind very quickly,
And then get dissatisfied and then just stop playing.
and then probably drop out. And
I don't know if it was intentional, Josh. So, Josh, that was just to be clear, that was a you twist about we don't collect income on skirmish games in between these specific game days.
This was
The house rule.
inspired by Dan, too.
Right.
So, yeah.
The interesting thing we're finding is that it passively creates a natural threshold to how many of those skirmish games you're willing to play.
Right.
Because as soon as your gang starts sustaining some injuries,
You need to send dudes to the dock. That costs some money.
yeah, and you're other than getting your D10 times 6 off
Right.
most scenarios, or
If you win.
D6 times 10, I said that backwards. If you win, that money's, even if you create a stash, which I did before we went into this phase, and I still am like, well, I'm pretty well cash strapped because I bought, my leader some gear. And
Right,
so it's
yep.
interesting that it's created a very natural limit for, if 2 or 3 people are like, oh, let's just play a whole bunch. Oh, okay, nah, I'm cool. I'm waiting until we have another day when I can get some proper income.
Me and Matt played our game, and we both had guys suffer permanent deaths. And we're like, oh, man, like this was fun. We got experience, but from a
Was it
money
worth
standpoint, we would have been better off not playing this game.
Right.
Which, it's a fun thing, and it prevents gangs from running away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice passive enforcer.
Yeah, and I'll say the one thing that would be nice is because while we're all in this group together, we're actually fairly spread out across the Bay Area. We're East Bay, Santa Cruz, South Bay here. Having our game day be once a month and then having March be just such a mess for scheduling that we had to delay things. Like I feel like we've maybe lost a little momentum already, but I think it's going to come back pretty soon.
Especially because we're able to schedule another
right. Yeah, now that Adepticon's not happening, we can get a game day in for that.
Yeah,
instead.
for sure.
But ideally, you're getting this done in a week or two for each kind of round of a challenge phase. So within a month, you're ideally having 2 game days at least, and then you're able to just move on to the next phase.
So, Josh, one of the things that we had an issue with, and I'm interested in your look on it, is the mission selection table for this campaign. We found it pretty lacking and not so good. And we actually the Goonhammer one actually ended up being a lot better for doing the mission selection for that. What was your thought on that?
So for the challenge games, we're using the standard one in the book, which is you roll 2d6 and figure out which one it is. But the neat thing is because we have a variety of terrain that everybody's bringing to the game days, we had basically 2 Sector Mechanicus tables and 2 Zone Mortalis tables. So depending on what you roll and what territory makes sense thematically, narratively to the gangs that are fighting or whoever's challenging is, they're choosing between the Sector Mechanicus and the Zone Mortalis boards, and then they're also choosing
the mission
or the territory.
And so that's actually speaks to one of the things I think about with this game is the social contract is really important. You have to have people who are invested in that.
Sure.
And not just somebody's going to go, oh, well, that scenario is much better for me, so I want that one. And then you get in an impasse onto what scenario you're going to be playing because, well, I want to play this one. Well, that doesn't really fit narrative. Well, I don't care. We rolled it, and so I think that the social contract thing kind of comes into play.
It's also built into the system. Like you have a challenger, and they're at the end of the day, their
objective is to challenge you.
They're challenging, and they're trying to get ahead. Yeah. So it is built in that way. On the skirmish game side of things, I borrowed from Dan, and it's a modified result that I think they also have basically everything I got from Dan. I think has been put on Goonhammer in the last week or two now.
Yeah,
right. It's a really good system.
Which is super useful, and that allows you to get a little bit more variety in the games that you're playing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, most of the time you're playing just the standard, the face-off mission.
So let's move on from the Dominion campaign and talk about the Law and Misrule campaign.
Absolutely.
So the Law and Misrule campaign came out in the Book of Judgment, which is one of the expansion books.
Yep.
And it's now, instead of based around gangs fighting over territories, you're fighting over rackets. So could be the selling of drugs or I don't know if they have this in there because I had the prostitution or all the classic
vices,
all the classic, gang
vices,
nefarious interests.
Yeah. Gambling den, stuff Euro gambling and, all the classic things that organized crime or gangs would take charge of. I don't know if they got body chop shops,
protection rackets,
different sort of
protection rackets.
It's in the name.
Yeah, okay. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, you're no longer fighting over territory. You're fighting over the businesses that are run within the hive.
Correct.
The illicit businesses, I suppose.
Yep.
So this one has 3 phases as well.
Yes. And this again is going to be very familiar to the Dominion campaign, and how it's set up is that there's the expansion phase, which
let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Is there a prostitution racket?
Actually, I don't know offhand.
I'm going to guess there's not.
I'm guessing not because
it's for
it's GW.
Modern GW is more wholesome than 90.
We can blow some guys' heads off, but by God.
Yeah, absolutely.
No sex.
Don't you pay for Okay. Anyway. 3 phases, expansion phase.
Yep. So expansion phase is going to be much like the occupation phase and the Dominion phase, where you're going out and you're collecting these businesses. You're accumulating rackets that are going to work for you, and very similarly, there's going to be each racket is going to do something for you. It's gonna grant you a boon if you're the controller of that racket, that nefarious business.
Second phase is the downtime phase.
Downtime phase, exactly the same.
Yep.
Maybe a fun game in there. Guys are going to get advanced. Dudes get returned from gangs that have been captured. You get that 250 credit infusion to bump you up to the next level, help you get some cool gear, things like that. And then you go into the justice phase, which very much like the third phase of the Dominion campaign,
Yep.
you are now going to be challenging. You're trying to take over businesses
Okay.
from other players.
Okay. So
And this is the book where the enforcers are introduced as a game.
Correct. Yeah.
so here's the thing about this. I mean, at its core, isn't it really just reskinned cards providing territories?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The rackets are a different flavor of a territory system. It is, like I was saying, it's all kind of the
It's
same
all representative.
campaign system.
Yeah.
But it's a different narrative spin to it. Different. You're not fighting over territories, you're fighting over businesses. So each thing
Right.
has a different flavor.
Right,
There's
right.
different interactions that are going to happen throughout the course of the campaign
Okay.
because rackets are going to be different from the territories.
Okay.
But functionally, it's the same system.
Got it.
But there is an extra layer of
Absolutely. So
Spice.
The thing that this does that's going to be different from the Dominion campaign, it's going to branch it out more. They're called intrigues.
Okay.
And intrigues, they're fun little subplots that basically you're going to draw a couple of these cards. I think you 2 or 3 cards throughout the
Okay.
course of the game, and these are basically secret objectives that each player has.
I like this.
I love that stuff.
While playing the game, if you achieve one of your secret objectives, you flip it over and you're like, I got this intrigue, and these are super powerful if you're able to pull them off.
Interesting. Are they difficult to pull off?
Some of them are going to be very difficult.
Probably
Some of
the
them
more
are gonna be
difficult,
pretty
the more
simpler,
powerful,
and,
right?
yeah, the bigger the effort, the bigger the reward.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is it's a fun little sub layer, and this actually is happening during gameplay. It's not fun paperwork on the side. It's actually a little kind of mini secret objective you're trying to achieve in addition to whatever the mission objective is.
Okay.
In the actual gameplay.
And then the other thing gangs have to do in this is choose kind of an alignment. Are they law-abiding gangs, which kind of seems counterproductive, but are they kind of
Sanctioned.
following the
sanctioned, right?
Yeah, or are they outlaw gangs?
Correct. Yeah.
And so, what are the effects of, like, why would I choose one of these or another?
Different rackets and intrigues are going to affect how your alignment, I guess is a better way to put it. Your alignment will affect how you interact with rackets and intrigues specifically. Some things will require you to be an outlaw in order to claim, so you might actually have to change your alignment, which is a possible thing that you can do.
There's stuff you can't buy if you're law-abiding.
Yeah, there's a black market, which is an additional layer. Dominion just has a trading post, and everybody has access to everything on the trading post. The Law and Misrule campaign has the trading post, but they also have a black market component.
So aside from the actual play, which really is relatively kind of the same, the fun paperwork part of the game changes drastically in the Law and Misrule campaign.
Yeah, because of the territories are different. Because
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's that's
kind of cool,
The
actually.
law and
More salad bar options here.
Love the intrigue.
Right.
I love the idea that, it splits. Like you have a split in like, well, this team can get X and this team can only get Y, right?
So you
cool.
can change your alignment to, like if the situation is Don probably knows this statistic well, but whatever the what percentage of crime is crime of opportunity? Like, people are generally good, but if the opportunity presents itself, they'll roll the dice, they'll take the chance.
Right.
And that's going to be kind of represented in some of these intrigues and rackets available. Like,
Right.
this is pretty good. I
wasn't going to steal the car, but the keys were in it.
So I'm going to go outlaw here. And then that's also going to, let me achieve whatever the X goal is. But then it also gives me access to the black market, which the goody two shoes are not able to buy things off the black market.
Are you able to switch back and forth?
Yes.
Interesting.
But
there's probably some ramifications.
Some people are.
It's situational.
Some people
Some games
can.
like enforcers they can't switch. They are going to be on the law side. Chaos are going to be on the
not law
outlaw
side.
the not
And
side.
Just
I
because
think-
the man's keeping me down.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's interesting. I mean, there's RPGs and other games where if you do certain things, you end up getting these points that push you towards being bad. Right?
Sure.
It can change your alignment if you do too much bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
You can. There's a similar stuff here. I think if you make too many choices and go down that road,
There's no going back.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons to it too.
Sure.
Right.
If you have if you're an outlaw gang, you can't hire some of the more famous dramatic
Personas and- yeah.
right? Like they're
Hitman or
yeah.
whatever,
Bounty
They're just not
hunters
gonna
don't
bounty
really
hunters.
care.
Yeah.
So they're equal opportunity. But there's some of the named characters specifically,
Interesting.
they're not going to fight for you if you're an outlaw.
Interesting.
for example.
Okay.
and I think one of the things that we didn't really talk about here, and I don't want to talk about it in the other episode or not, and we mentioned a couple times about rescue missions, and in this it comes in where you can actually take captives. If you knock somebody out of action, you have a chance to take somebody hostage or take them captive. And in this campaign,
I think you can do that in both.
You can do that in
right, but in this campaign, you actually get bounties. You can claim bounties on people.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So it's another way to get money. Yeah. If you're a law-abiding gang, you can claim bounties.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And so again, the objectives here are kind of the same in the sense that there's not necessarily one single objective again.
Right. Yep. So the overall objective of the campaign, again, there's going to be these various metrics that you're tracking towards, again, called triumphs. And we can go through these real quick if we want to.
Yeah, please.
Racketeers, the
Most rackets.
gang player with the most rackets at the end of the campaign. Hitman is most gang leaders taken out of action.
Right, not just gangers.
So not just gangers, but specifically leaders of gangs taken out of action.
Yeah.
Whoever's claimed the most heads is going to
got it.
Gain the Hitman. Financier is going to be whoever has the largest wealth at the end of the campaign. The Muscle is most battles fought at the end of the campaign. And then the Lord of Law or Misrule is going to be whoever has the highest reputation.
Interesting. I mean, you can see kind of the organized crime themes here.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. So, okay. Comparatively, strengths versus the Dominion campaign, what do you think?
It's going to be very similar strength. I would say the one kind of big bonus strength is that you do have those fun extra layers of flavor with the intrigues and
I think that's awesome.
The law, outlaw kind of alignments and how they affect other components within the game. So
provides more choices.
There's a couple more levers to pull that have fun interactions.
Okay. I'd say that's also one of its limitations is you're taking a game that's already got a lot of fun paperwork and you're adding more fun paperwork on top of that.
How much fun can I take?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's going to test that limit.
But in terms of ice cream's too cold.
Yeah. No, I don't think this is the case of that, though.
It's not. And the interesting thing, and I talked about this before, was during our game day, the fun paperwork part of it, like to get to our next game, we were hurrying through the fun paperwork part, and I felt like I was kind of missing out,
right?
Because I was just like in such a rush. I'm like, what, roll? Okay, I'm rolling. Okay, now I'm rolling. Okay, you and I are now playing. Great, let's go play. And I was like, I kind of wanted to savor that ice cream a little bit.
And that part, again, going back to it, like if we all lived a little bit closer to each other and we could get together every 2 weeks, then it means we're not trying to get like 3 games in a day. It's like, it's,
and if we got rid of all our wives and we just had no kids and no commitment, let's just all quit our jobs.
Who's Shell going to go live with so we can all turn this into the nerd compound? It's going to be great. She won't mind already. At all.
She actually doesn't even care if it's a nerd.
I know, she's pretty.
Like I told her, I think they might cancel Adepticon. I go, I think I'm going to have game days, a few game days here. She goes, okay. And I go, is that okay? She goes, why would I care? And I go, because it'd be like 3 days till like super late. She's like, and I'm like,
pretty clear.
I love you, babe.
There it
is. Well, I think, Jody, I think to speak to that though, this is literally an expansion to the game.
Yes.
Right. And so if you've got a game group that has played one or two of the Dominion campaigns, adding this extra layer actually would be kind of welcome.
Sure. It probably adds
you can say, okay, I know how to do this. I've done this a bunch of times. Okay, I got this.
That territory.
Right. And it's like, intrigues. Oh, you mean I can get this during the game?
Right.
And it gives me stuff. This is awesome, right? Especially for somebody like me.
It's a good point.
Who gets wiped off the table pretty regularly. I can go for that Pyrrhic victory, right? It's like, I got to kill that one dude, or I got to take that one, I got to loot that one crate, or whatever the intrigue happens to be. I can have something that doesn't require me to cause him bottle off the table. I can still get something powerful if I get some other thing. So I think it's as an expansion. If you look at it that way, I think it's an excellent add-on.
I think that's sorry.
No, I'm just saying because of the intrigues and because of it adds the black market, it adds all these things that you're familiar with. It shakes it up.
I think as an expansion, I think that's a super point. I agree with that 8,000%. Sometimes people in this hobby tend to be a little bit completionist though, and like buy all the things and want to dive in. Who? I'm just saying I've heard some people do that. So this maybe isn't the one to start with. I think would be, in terms of a limitation, is
fair point.
Do a Dominion first and then absolutely.
Yeah. And this is one of the problems I have with Dark Uprising having enforcers in it.
Gotcha.
Because it pushes you into the Book of Justice.
Sure.
Right? Because you want to use that gang.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so I think that it's better as a starter if they had started with ones that are just in the core rulebook.
Well, let's move down.
Yeah.
I want to wait. There's one more strength I think, and I want Josh's input on this.
Please.
Is to me, this one, though, does feel like the players can do a little bit more of the bookkeeping, a little less arbiter-centric. Again, especially if they're experienced.
Right.
That because it's just the rackets moving around as opposed to having to track individual territories and things, it feels like there's almost narratively a push for the players to be doing a little bit more here than maybe the
that's
you're
really nice.
Owning and operating your own nefarious operation.
Right,
so
exactly.
I think it's weird because mechanically you have the same amount of, control,
right?
Really, but with a couple extra levers to pull. But yeah, thematically, I think you're absolutely right that it's not the hive being discovered. It's you guys are actually moving it on not territories, but businesses.
Yeah.
Just example wise, like, oh, I have a skull pile. Woo, I've got a skull pile. Who cares? That's my turf, right? But if I'm like, no, I'm running a Prometheum addiction ring. Well, now I feel a little dedicated to that. Like I've got these junkies that are counting on me, and I got to keep them going. There we go.
And the other thing is you can again
Nice
in terms of an expansion, you can use the territories from the Dominion campaign and say, okay, here's the rackets that are associated with those, and you're running them. And so now you've really got ownership because you fought for these territories, and now you have businesses associated with them.
Yeah, yeah, you could absolutely, as the arbiter,
That'd be crazy.
It's great.
It's more work, but
it's cool.
But it's
so
super fun and thematic, and just adding more narrative into it. So yeah, absolutely
loving the paperwork.
So yeah,
way deep dive.
The reason I started us with the Dominion campaign is exactly this reason because it's
smart move.
It's the foundation. If you understand the Dominion, you can really go to anything from there. So get a strong foundation, and one of the extra, I guess, additions to the Law and Misrule or any of the other non-Dominion campaigns is that if you, to Dawn's earlier point, if like somebody's really just trying to kind of game the game and go like, this territory works the best for me, I'm going to grab that territory. This removes that a bit because maybe there's less familiarity with the territories compared to like the rackets are going to be newer,
right?
Things like that. So it just mixes up. It's fresh material to engage with.
All right, so we also have the Book of Peril, which kind of supplements the Dominion and Law and Misrule campaign.
Right.
There is no campaign system in there itself.
Right.
But it does add a few things that you can pull in. And this is where I start talking about, like, the game is expanding. There's rules across multiple books. Some of the books, you know, like you can play without this book without a problem.
Unless you want to use a certain gang.
We mentioned the Book of Judgment introduces the enforcers, and that actually has it's a specific page of how enforcers are going to interact within a Dominion campaign because they are different than the House Gang, which I covered a little bit ahead of time. Similar in this, the Book of Peril is going to introduce the Venators, the Chaos Cultists, and the Genestealer Cult, and how they interact.
But here's my point.
Book of Red, sorry.
Yeah, it's Book of Red.
That's Book of Red. Yeah.
But here's my point. You can Venators are in Book of Peril.
The bounty hunters.
Yes.
But my point is the arbiter can simply say we're only using gangs from these books.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
like that's their. It's within their authority to do that,
and even encouraged, especially if you're starting. If you're early on, and if you're not familiar with,
and you're branching out to some,
if you're new to Necromunda, I would say do everybody a favor. Start with the basics. Can everybody please just play a house gang?
Go a house gang.
Yeah. And I, as somebody who didn't do that,
you and me both, buddy.
I absolutely agree with you. No, I'm serious. I
agree.
I watched other gangs getting advances and getting bonuses and getting really cool, and I wasn't. and because I started with a gang, I played the bounty hunters, the Venators, and I was playing in hard mode. It was really difficult, and so I absolutely agree with you. I think if you're going to start a Necromunda campaign with people who haven't played and are not experienced, start with the core rulebook gangs, start with house gangs, and force people to choose those.
Okay. So going back to the Book of Peril again, I think as I looked through this book in preparation for the episode, the things that I really appreciated the most out of it were the additions of the bad zones and the trading posts, the battlefields, the bad zone terrains, and those kinds of things. I think that added
bad
a ton.
Mission specific.
And the missions, those added a ton of flavor.
Death World kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's how it felt to me.
Pretty neat thing here is the guild alliances that you can form in the book, which I've only started kind of scratching the surface on that since we're kind of
Not there yet.
Yeah, we're not super deep in our campaign yet, but there's some pretty cool advantages that you can call upon the guilds forming these alliances, but also it helps balance out games with lower reputation gangs and things like that. You can call on the guild for favors, and it's just a neat extra layer. And again, this is going to be an expansion option on an edition, which you can apply to, as far as I know, any of the other campaign types.
Yeah. Joe, do you have a note here? Inquisitor 28 for Necromunda.
That's really the Venators. Is the Venator gang in particular is if you like Inquisitor 28, if you like that do-it-yourself, I feel like the Venator gang
is the DIY.
It's the DIY kit. It is the now. Admittedly,
this is what you were playing, right?
Yeah,
and admittedly, it's from what I've read about them and heard about them that it is like no, it's going to be tough. That you can make whatever you want.
You can do cool stuff, but you're only going to get a couple guys, and
it is a hard.
It is
mode.
really difficult. I mean, I think that I felt really kind of free to do stuff in terms of creating the gang, but everything is very high cost, and they get pinned just like anybody else,
right?
Kind of like what Carl was saying before. I mean,
Necromunda being an alternating activation skirmish game, like number of bodies does make a difference in how the actual game plays out.
For
so
sure.
If you only have a couple of guys on the board, you're going to be out activated.
Well, look, if two guys fight 10, that's going to be rough.
And here's the thing,
even in real life.
Right.
Unless you're Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris.
I wanted to use the Forge World models.
Yeah.
The Forge World Necromunda models. Now, all those guys are actually what they call dramatis personae.
Dramatis personae.
They're special characters. And the thing about those special characters is, A, they cost a lot of points. I mean, a lot of points.
Yes.
And they bend the rules. Like, they'll have multiple skills and things that you wouldn't normally start with.
That's why they cost so many points.
Right, yeah. So what I did is I used the models, and then I just created a vendor gang out of the book.
Gotcha.
And just used equipment that they had, right? And just pointed them out that way. Now, one of the cool things about the Venators is that when you create your hunters, your bounty hunters, you have like 4 different stat lines you can pick from. One might be faster, one might be tougher, might be able to shoot better, and those kinds of things.
Archetypes to build your guys around.
Yeah, you can kind of build archetypes on your dudes, and that's pretty cool.
Sure.
But again, you're spending a lot of points on those guys, and I think that. So I think that was a little bit of a limitation. I'm a little sad that, I want to play Necromunda. I'm going to use Necromunda models from Forge World. Oh, it doesn't really work well to do that.
Well, it doesn't work like that. Like, I mean, the Venator gang doesn't quite work.
Right,
like
it
that.
doesn't. And there is no Venator box. And so I was using these guys because they are described as bounty hunters. I was like, oh, well, that's what I'm playing. I'm playing bounty hunters. Yeah. Well, one of the things that is really good at Necromunda, and you better have on just about every one of your guys, is a long-range weapon, like a las gun or an auto gun or something like that.
I disagree with you there.
And, well...
Corpse gun and Colts are real good, and they just want to get up close.
All they want to do is get up close.
Well, I know. I mean, especially if you're playing Zone Mortalis, but it really helps to have a gun that shoots more than 12 inches. And,
I'm not going to argue it doesn't, but there's ways around
and the Forge World models, they don't have a lot of long-range weapons on them. And for Venators to not have it...
Better buy some smoke grenades, buddy.
Yeah.
And I would say Venators are definitely
they're struggling.
The modelers' army, though.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I meant when I said it's Inquisitor 28 is you're going to sit down and spend some serious time customizing each
kit bashing.
Yeah. If you like that part of Inquisitor 28, you're going to...
And if a guy gets dead, either you're going to rename him and use him again, or
you just really like...
And you're going to build a new guy.
To that exact point about Inquisitor 28, the Warhammer TV Necromunda Battle Report that they did, is probably about 2 months ago now, was actually an Inquisitor warband specifically that they ran as a
Venator gang.
Which is
I think that's really cool.
So,
it is. And it's easy to do it that way. Yeah.
So between the bad zones and those two, that's where I kind of went like, oh, this has all those elements of, if you don't follow the Inquisitor 28 threads on Instagram or Facebook, if you want some good inspiration, just watch what those folks do. Yeah. Again, it's another one of those hyper passionate, small specialist game fan bases. And those...
Eventually, we'll talk about Inquisitor the game, and then we'll talk about Inquisitor 28.
That one.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. Yeah. So anyway, that was what jumped to mind is like, hey, this particular book, if that's your thing, this is probably the book you want to look into and talk to your arbiter about.
Yeah, all right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do this. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come right back. We'll get into part 2 of our coverage. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, I'm here with Dan and Campbell of the 40K Badcast. How are the two of you gentlemen doing?
Hey, Carl. Great. Thanks for having us.
Peachy keen. Haven't been on the phone with you for 20 minutes at this point at all.
Not at all. Sounds completely natural. The reason I wanted you guys to join for this particular episode is because you are running what started out apparently as a 40K podcast, but it's quickly transformed into a Necromunda podcast.
Well, we're enthusiasts.
You
Carl.
are.
What do you expect?
No, you are, and I love the fact that I get most of my Necromunda news from you guys. But the reason I wanted to talk to you was because we have just started our first Necromunda campaign. Well, my first Necromunda campaign.
Exciting.
Others have played in Necromunda campaigns before. And it's off to a good start. We had a day here where everybody got in 3 games, 2 to 3 games.
Cool.
We had a odd number of people that day because somebody couldn't make it, and so it rotated around, who sat out a game, but they got some points. Yeah. And so I'm curious, you guys, I have listened to your show. I've talked to you a number of times about the campaigns that you have played for Necromunda. And I'm curious as to how you feel the campaigns in Necromunda are, exceed the expectations of like campaigns in other systems. So for example, Kill Team has a very light campaign system, and I to have, no pun intended, a campaign system like Necromunda for Kill Team. But what is it about the campaigns in Necromunda that make it the game it is to you guys?
Well, I think it takes and I think this is going to be very good for you, because I think it takes the miniature game thing and adds a very healthy dash of pen and paper RPG to the system, because not only are you strategizing and using tactics and stuff on the tabletop like you do with 40K or whatever other miniatures game, but you're also building your characters, naming your characters, choosing their skills and their weapons, and you get to see them grow as fighters as the campaign progresses, and you get some emotional buy-in.
Yeah, and that kind of bakes in a sense of narrative into the core of the game, because it's no longer, just ganger number 2 with shotgun, and maybe it is, but like you're going to be hanging with these guys for a while, so you're going to get them attached. So even if he is ganger with shotgun number 2, you are going to be like, oh no, ganger with shotgun number 2, you caught on fire and fell into a dumpster. Like that rules.
Right, but at the same time, you're not going to name them ganger with shotgun number 2 because it's Necromunda, and if it's my gang, all my gangers are named after McDonald's menu items because I painted them yellow and red. And Campbell, I believe you name all of your characters after meat products.
It depends. Team Meat was all after meat products. So I had gangers like Cocktail Weenie and Pork Pie. And then Big Musclas Hustlas were led by Big Muscla and Bicep Billy. And they were all muscle groups. And then Big Hustla was renamed Big Chungus over the course of a particularly bloody campaign where he reaped many, many souls with his heavy bolter.
Because he did, Chungus. Right? Like his
Necromunda's most wanted, that guy.
His name changed because of the actions that got associated with him, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I mean, these are silly. Like, this is an exceedingly silly name following an exceedingly silly name. And I think Necromunda also very much plays into things being a bit silly because of how like wacky and wild the game can be. But you can build up these sorts of titles and name changes because that isn't just your champion anymore. It's like, oh, that guy's old neck snapper because he keeps stomping people when they're down, or he's gotten like 3 dead on arrival results when injuring other gangers or whatever. So you kind of build these mythologies and stories around characters, and there's even some rules in there, like some of the injury rolls can be like memorable thing where you kind of like the person you beat up remembers that this person beat them up and they have like a bonus against them and stuff like that. There's just so much of that narrative and role-playing aspect built into the game that just isn't there in other games.
Well, we recently talked about this very thing on our show, Carl, the 40K Badcast, if the listeners are curious, of course. But we talked about how this game, it lends itself towards more narrative play than something like 40K. because when you, let's say, take aim and shoot a weapon at an enemy character, you don't know what's going to happen. In 40K, it's a binary thing. It's did you hit, did you miss?
Right.
In Necromunda, it can cascade into dozens of different things that could potentially happen because you decided to fire a gun at an enemy.
And what you mean by that is I shoot, one of my characters shoots another character. Okay, he's taken out of action. But the result of that taken out of, if he's even taken out of action, but the result of him being taken out of action is now, okay, what happens to him beyond that, right? He could lose an eye, or he could lose a leg, or he could actually learn from it and get better.
Yeah, or you could run out of ammo, or you could miss your intended target, and then you have to check with every model on the firing line that you measure out using the range of the weapon, and then you have to check to see if they were hit by the stray shot. You just don't know what's going to happen, and that leads to a certain unpredictability, kookiness, and like fun storytelling experience that I think surpasses really any of the games that Games Workshop puts out.
Okay.
Yeah, I described it once as a Rube Goldberg machine of misfortune, and it is kind of like playing Mousetrap in a miniature game in a lot of ways, because yeah, you did hit that guy and they went out of action, so you get to roll on that table to see what happens to that guy. But what about the gangers around them? They need to take cool checks. This one ran into the dark and got eaten by a monster who was unseen, because that's what the mission had. That guy, well, he was doing pretty okay because he jacked up on some friends on before the game started. God knows what's going to happen to him when the game's over. But there's just so many layered rules. Listeners of our show will know that we get kind of down on, some of 40K's added complexity, and you might think like Necromunda's got so much complexity. The difference is in Necromunda, it's not 100 dudes and a bunch of tanks. It's like the men and women who make up your gang, and that's going to be maybe 10 models.
The game once you get into it, like, it plays fast. It is not.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
For its complexity,
gangers are not long for this world.
Yeah. But I mean, not even that, but just for its complexity, like you just go through your cycle of this guy's going to do this guy's going to do that, and as you're taking your turn, you're like, okay, he's going to shoot at that guy. Okay, he shoots at that guy. Now what are you going to do?
And as listeners may not know, the ones who haven't experienced Necromunda yet, Necromunda is alternating activation.
Yeah.
So during a turn of Necromunda, it's not that you're waiting for your opponent to do his entire side. It's going one by one, or sometimes there's group activation, so you might do 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah.
So both players are engaged in the turn the entire time.
Yeah. So there's really like a round. Like when you finally get to the end of a round, you're like, oh, we got to end of a round. Boy, a lot happened during that game, or during that turn. So there's currently there's a little bit of extra stuff, but there's really 2 different main campaign systems right now, which is the Dominion campaign system and the Law and Misrule campaign system.
Don't forget about the Uprising campaign that came with the Book of Ruin.
Came with the not just with the Book of Ruin, but with
was it in the box too?
Yeah, it's in the box. That's actually where.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got that, but really, okay. So let's talk about all 3. Which of these have you played? I know you guys have played the Dominion campaign system.
Yes.
And have you played the Law and Misrule one?
Yeah, I'm running a Law and Misrule campaign right now as we speak. We are in round 5 of the 6-round campaign, and the gangs are getting kind of ridiculous.
Do you always set in the Law and Misrule? Is there a definitive, like, you play 6 rounds, or is it?
But it's good to set time limits on these things, and we do. Everybody gets in 1 game every 2 weeks, and we have a challenge system where the weaker gangs get priority to who they can challenge, and then you get together, play a game, and then if you want to play extra games, you can. But the main game, we call them challenge games, are incentivized or double experience, increased rewards. It's a lot. That's the one you want to nail. So if you don't get a chance to play your challenge game, if you don't get a chance to play any skirmish games, you're not going to be at a huge disadvantage. So, sometimes in a campaign, the person with the most free time will have the best gang because they'll just, crank out games all over the place. But in my campaign, everybody but me has kids and we all have full-time jobs. So I thought that 2 weeks for 1 game was a
that's very reasonable. Yeah.
Amount of time. It wouldn't, stress people out too much.
Yeah. Campbell, I recently heard you talking during your last episode about a campaign you're playing in, and you were talking about adding some rules. Like you were like, oh, I want to do this kind of house rule and that kind of rule. And Dan at that time was like, oh, I like that idea. The thing that strikes me interesting compared to, say, games of 40K is those are always, it feels like everybody's very attached to those rules. Here in this campaign system, you are treating it almost like a role-playing game. Like you're like, oh, this seems to work and that seems to work. I'll add that as my special rule for this campaign. Is that common?
It feels, I mean, my experience is kind of, limited. I've played with 2 or 3 different groups of Necromunda, both new and old, but some sort of house rules like that have always been in there somewhere. Whether they are things like, actually, Dan, I don't know how much of the campaign you were just talking about is your own house ruling, how much that is just straight out of the book.
That's my rules.
Yeah,
that I made. Yeah,
I imagine most people are pretty cool with it, and I think there's a few things here. One is, people are approaching this a bit more like a role-playing game, not so far as being like, oh, you pull out ye flask and it is full of ye friends on, roll a d20, but like, people are expecting things to contribute to a story, and things are, because of the level of fluffy, crunchy rule mixture in there, people are just kind of expecting things to be kind of different. And since also with 40K, you can go down to your game store, you can go down to, well, in my case, multiple game stores, and just get a random pickup game of 40K with anybody. You're not going to really find that with Necromunda. Like Necromunda, as with all the specialist games, kind of benefits from being a bit more enthusiast friendly. So generally, most people I've met who are into Necromunda are capital I, capital N, into Necromunda, and they really care about it. And, just being able to get a game at all is already pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But if there's some house rules that you think sound pretty good in your group, you're not going to argue. I think the only house rule I've really argued was one that very specifically targeted the effectiveness of my bolters for reasons that are purely not selfish.
Well, Carl, one of the things that's interesting about Necromunda is that for the 20 years or so that it wasn't being published, the game was still alive. People were still playing it with 40K models or their old Necromunda collection, and they were publishing these adapted rules on the internet, and they were not like out of this world. They weren't crazy or anything. They were usable and they were tight and they were well written. And so a lot of people bring that experience with them from older versions of Necromunda to the current Necro 17, as a lot of people call it, because it came out in 2017. And customizing the game has been a part of it since, just about the very beginning. And importantly, with Necro 17, the rules are not the best written. So a lot of the times arbitrators or game masters need to adjust their wording one way or another to make them usable. Yeah. So tinkering with the rules in Necromunda is a tradition, big time tradition.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point. I was going to hit on that. And then you hit on another point, which is the arbitrator. And Campbell, you mentioned how people are typically okay with rules that you introduce. And I think that's because they don't want to be the arbitrator most of the time. We had Doug here who was going to run our Necromunda campaign, and then I was afraid it was increasing his blood pressure. And so Josh took over, thankfully, and is doing a great job, like right from the get-go. And so I've noticed, like, everybody, like it's like the cleric in D&D. Like nobody wants to be the cleric, right?
Yeah. Cleric's got the best spells at high level, man.
I actually like playing cleric, but that's neither here nor there.
A lot of people don't know. It's not just healing.
Nope.
Okay.
No. Flame strike.
Summoning all sorts of demons.
That's right. Okay. So anyway, the point being, the arbitrator's such an important part of Necromunda and the campaign, and ensuring that the theme of the campaign is good and the flow of the games are happening and that kind of thing. Any advice for like budding arbitrators that you guys might have?
I have a lot, but let's start with Campbell.
I thought Campbell was the budding arbitrator. I was just trying to help him out on the slide, Dan.
Have fun, make friends. I've never arbitrated any sort of Necromunda campaign. I've played in campaigns that didn't have an arbitrator, that were just kind of like loosey-goosey, and resultantly they just kind of sprawl out. You end up with 1 or 2 gangs running away with it. Nobody really wants to play with a 3,000 credit Goliath gang with their 970 credit Condor gang or whatever, and the campaign just fizzles out and dies. Like, I won't say it's quite as intrinsic to a role-playing game. Game Master isn't quite as intrinsic as it is to a role-playing game. Like, you can't have Dungeons and Dragons without a DM,
right?
But it is very important for anything resembling a long-running multi-person event. Because, like, if 2 people want to just necro back and forth and just watch their gangs jack up while they do that, they can do that. That's going to be great. They're going to have a fun time. But if you're having even 3 people, you're going to want someone to at least do some light arbitration.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest takeaway that any budding arbitrator needs to hear is just think about what would be fun. For instance, there's a tactics card in Necromunda called History of Violence, which allows the player who plays it to remove a fighter from from their opponent's crew. Mm-hmm. So the crew is like the portion of your roster that you bring to a game. And this is very unfun because it's usually you target your opponent's leader, who's your best character. Of course. And you say, oh, you can't bring your best character to the game. Sorry, I have this card. It says I can do that. And that's not fun. So in my campaigns, I straight out banned that card. Yeah. You can't use it. Yeah. Because it like when you're creating rules, you don't want to take away from your opponent's
exactly what I was going to say.
You want to add to
your experience.
The person who's playing it, their experience. So for arbitrators out there, you got to think what is fun, what isn't fun. And if there's not fun things built into the game, you can just take them out. Like I take out that one. There's another tactics card out there called Dangerous Footing that it sucks. It's no fun. So I take that one out too. There's a lot you can do with the game, and because of the tradition of meddling with it with house rules, people are pretty permissive when it comes to stuff, but just focus on fun. And then when you get into late campaigns and you have a gang that has like a 3,000 gang rating, and to listeners who don't know, a gang start at 1,000. So 3 starting gangs worth of gang in one gang. Saying gang a lot here. And if you go up against somebody who's got a much lower gang rating, it's going to be a whole lot less fun. So you have to try to build your campaign with mitigating that sort of thing in mind, as giving bonuses to the people with lower ratings, or letting people with lower ratings choose who they're going to fight before the people with higher ratings can, so they can potentially avoid these really, really bad matchups.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, you can choose another lower rung player or gang to fight against, to avoid fighting against Big Chungus and Campbell, who says he's bad at games, but isn't.
We had that at a Necromunda campaign weekend we went to last year called Cinco de Necro.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Yeah, where a one of the lower, if not the lowest rated gang, which was the Salt Queens, challenged me, Big Muscles Hustlers, who were the highest rated gang, because he wanted Big Chungus's head. And he didn't get his head, but he got a lot of Big Chungus's bolt rounds, I can tell you that.
Freely given.
My first gang is also a Goliath gang. Named the Smoke Boys. They're all ex-prisoners, and so I went through looking for like cool prison names, but that was where it came from.
Have you cracked open the House of Chains yet?
I haven't. I have not had even a chance yet to look at it, so I'm very excited about it. I did hear your guys' kind of initial take on it, and I'm very excited to see them kind of introducing these house gang books as well. I think it'll bring a lot to the. I did order my sump. I did order my sump croc though.
Hell yeah! You have to.
So much.
Super excited about the sump croc. So,
well, Carl, since our last episode, I've written 2 articles on Goonhammer about the House of Chains.
Yeah.
So if you don't have time to read through the whole book yet, you can go get some condensed versions over at Goonhammer.com.
Let me tell you, you guys have great tips there on Goonhammer. And in fact, just talking to you guys, the great part about our first day of gaming was initially I was going to play the Corpse Grinder cult guys, and I was talking to you guys, and I was showing you my list, and you're like, oh, you really want to put some smoke grenades on these guys because they're close combat and you're going to need to get them. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. So taking a cue from that, as I was building the Goliath gang, because it was already painted by Roboed from Life After the Cover Save, nice. I said, okay, I need to put some smoke grenades on these guys. Nobody was prepared for the smoke grenade nonsense that I was pulling.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
And
smoke grenades are excellent.
Even the more experienced players were like, wait, what? And then I just like run through the smoke grenades.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
The same thing in my campaigns, except in our case it was a Delac gang, which had smoke grenades and all like the photo goggles and all that stuff. So they would just smoke your whole gang out and then just pick them off, and you couldn't even shoot back because you didn't plan for this like bamboozling sort of strategy they put out there.
Let me tell you, I earned enough.
Things though about Necromunda is that you can take these sort of edge strategies, like throwing a bunch of smoke grenades to blind your enemy, but then you have all these photo goggles that can see through the smoke, and you target your enemies where they can't shoot back at you. It's one of those like cool things about Necromunda where you can take that sort of weird strategy and still have successful games sometimes, because again, it is Necromunda and your strategy is going to fall apart almost guaranteed every game, because it is, after all, Necromunda.
Well, speaking of
feature, not a bug.
Speaking of photo goggles, it's interesting because in that first weekend I earned enough to go, oh, you know what? I should buy these photo goggles for these guys too. So I'd already bought those.
Yes.
So I'm well down that path already.
Yes.
The rest of the guys are just
do you find yourself just like pulling the trading post up and just taking a look at all the stuff and thinking, man, would be cool if I had one of those?
Yeah. The other thing I noticed, one of the points where you really have to pay attention, you know, in 40K, like we can have a game day here. We come either Kill Team or 40K and you play your games and great. And then you go home. There is a lot of cleanup you have to do after each game with Necromunda. And what I mean by the cleanup,
shotgun shells and skull fragments. Yeah, it's real gross.
What I mean by the cleanup is there's a lot of follow through you have to do on, okay, now I need to roll for all these guys and see what happened. Now, where did you play and where did you play? And I do notice that like we come to a kind of screeching halt where everybody's doing that piece and then we kick off the next game. So
one of the things in the rules is when a fighter gets taken out of action, you do roll the injury roll right then.
Mm-hmm. Right then.
Right then, yeah. In old Necromunda, you didn't.
Yeah, we were waiting till the end.
Okay. It's an easy habit to fall into, and honestly, it doesn't make a huge difference. Except, again, if if your ganger killed their ganger, well, your ganger gets an extra experience point that they might not get otherwise.
That is true, and we did calculate those in, but it would be easier to do right then. That's a good point.
Yeah, because with that out of the way, like if you're with a trusted game group of people who aren't going to be like, oh, I happen to roll boxcars in the trading post every week or whatever, like you can do a lot of that stuff at home. Like a lot of that is homework, and you can do it at home.
Yeah.
But I don't mean for it to sound unfun. Like a lot of the fun is that post-game sequence sort of stuff, being like, oh yeah, cool, I got a free juve, or I got to good roll in the trading post, I'm gonna buy gold plating for my heavy bolter or whatever.
I think that is really fun. The thing we found in that day though was like we were rushed through that piece, so I didn't get to enjoy it as much as I wanted to.
Yeah,
you know what
if
I'm
you're
saying?
budgeting time out, you need to budget some time out for that sort of thing if you're doing a game day or something of the sort.
Good to know.
As weird as it sounds, bookkeeping can be the most fun part of Necromunda.
Well, yeah, because that's where you're like, oh, I've got enough experience points to give my champion a cool new skill. In the case of Goliath, not really once you get nerfs to steel, but a cool new stat increase.
Hey, Unstoppable is good too.
Well, Unstoppable is pretty good, and the new muscle tree is really dope.
It was funny, Campbell, because I did hear you on your last episode talking about how you kept forgetting nerves of steel, and that was the thing I kept forgetting with my Goliath King as well.
It's the best skill. You can't forget that
so
one.
Good.
Well,
it's so good.
Skill, and I'm the worst player. Put these two things together, and nothing happens.
Except
Campbell has a
win.
long and illustrious history of forgetting how his own units work.
And that transcends game systems, I'll have you know.
I wish I could say I had used that to my advantage. Okay, so aside from the campaigns, like what are the themes of Necromunda that appeal to you guys? Because it's still in the 40K universe, but it's a very different look at it.
Well, it's one of the reasons why we love reading like Eisenhorn or any of the Rites of Passage by Mike Brooks. Have you read that one, Carl?
Yep.
Okay, so it's this setting focuses not on like the big sprawling campaigns of the 41st millennium, but it focuses on the day-to-day life of people at the bottom rungs of society. And it gives you a completely different take, a completely different flavor on what the Warhammer 40K universe is. And then you combine that with the gameplay, which is sort of like a sci-fi Western almost kind of thing, where you're getting into shootouts and it's lawless, and there's the Guilders, which are basically like the U.S. Marshals, and it's just such a like interesting portmanteau of so many different sci-fi tropes and things that there's something there for everyone, and it's fun and different than the rest of 40K.
Yeah, there's a real blend of the things that make 40K special kind of cranked up to 11 there. Because like my favorite artwork of 40K artwork, like as much as I love the big sprawling battlescapes, is like the weird Dave Gallagher side pieces where it's just like a little gross cherub like dragging a skull that has a gun strapped to it, and like all the for lack of a term weirdos that are just kind of on the periphery of
like the margins, like literally on the margins of the pages.
Yeah, as much in the margins of society as there are the margins of those pages. And I love being able to explore what that world is like.
Whoa, poetic. So nice. Little snaps for my boy Crumbles over here.
I'll have you know, I went to at least 2 English classes in college.
Yeah, take it easy, Shakespeare. Jeez, leave some for the rest of us.
But yeah, it's just you're getting to explore those parts of the 41st millennium, and those are the things that I think make 40K the most special, because as much as I love the imagery, you're gonna find a lot of places where big dudes in big armor with big guns are shooting big monsters in space. Like 40K has its own special blend of that thing, but you also have Starship Troopers, Gears of War, StarCraft, insert sci-fi franchise here. Well, like Necromunda, the closest you get to it really is Judge Dredd, and even then, like Judge Dredd is focusing on the judges, who are the enforcers, who, as we all know, are the bad guys in Necromunda. But this is focusing on all the guys he locks up, essentially.
Right.
So you're getting like these punks who all have names like Scragger Jane and stuff like that. Like it's fantastic.
It's all the guys involved in the block war.
Oh yeah, Downpipe Sally.
Downpipe Sally.
Poor Downpipe Sally.
Pour one out for Downpipe.
That's right.
Pour one down the pipe for Downpipe Sally.
We almost cared about her.
Oh, we got so close.
All right.
15 pages.
Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate your take on this. If people want to hear more about this, as we've mentioned, they can go to the 40K Badcast. Why don't you guys tell us what the best way to find information about what you guys are doing is? Because you have like 100 avenues of approach right now.
Well, we have 40kbadcast.com. That's 40kbadcast.com, where you can find all of our episodes are up there. We are on Spotify. We are on iTunes. We are on Google Play. We are on other podcast aggregators that pull from any of those sources. And you can also like get at us on our Twitter. We don't have a show Twitter, but both of us are on Twitter. At DB_sleazy for me, at Brother SRM for Campbell. That's probably the best place to find us on social media, because I'm addicted to it, and I think Campbell's maybe not addicted to it, but perhaps adjacent to addicted to it.
I'm exposed to enough brain poison on a daily basis via Twitter, yes.
But the best place to find out about our show is 40kbadcast.com. And as far as Necromunda content goes, I write a weekly column with my friend Jules, who ran Cinco de Necro last May with me as co-arbitrators, I should say. It's called Necromonday, because we're very smart and funny, and that's on goonhammer.com every Monday morning. We just put out a comprehensive analysis of the new Goliath gangs from the House of Chains book, and it's a lot. We were up to like 21 pages in our working document for it, but it's comprehensive. We talk about everything. We touch on everything. It's a deep dive. So any burgeoning Goliath players out there, I think, could really benefit from giving that a read.
You did write a massive article on what cards are worth taking and which ones are not, and I found that to be very helpful. But
not only did we talk about cards, but we gave what we think is a better method for using cards.
Yep.
Because it's a mess. That whole system is a big mess in Necromunda. But hey,
you still love it.
.com, read about it, and find a better way.
Yeah, I mean, Goonhammer's fantastic, not just for Necromunda stuff, but also 40K stuff. I found they had written some great rules for Zone Mortalis, revamped to 8th edition there, and I absolutely love the articles there. So it's a great site to go
You guys
to.
do fantastic work there. But I just want to remind your listeners, Carl, that on the way to goonhammer.com, stop by 40kbadcast.com first.
I'm
and
sorry,
check
where?
out our show. We're getting very close to our biggest and most expensive episode yet. We just finished episode 67. We're about to record episode 68. And Campbell, can you remind me what number comes after 68?
It's before 70. It's after 68. Let me check my notes here for a second. Let me
While he's researching that, we have discovered that number, which we shall not mention, has been scrubbed from the minds of all of humanity, all of the Imperium in the Warhammer 40K universe, because it's a little too much, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think this this cursed number 69. I don't think I think that might not be safe for work. I'll be honest here.
Carl, can you tell we're excited?
I can tell you're excited. What I can't wait for, what I cannot wait for, is the Factor fan fiction in that episode.
Well,
I'm
might not have to wait too long for it, my friend, because I think we're thinking about recording that episode at Adepticon, potentially with you.
Oh God, I don't know that I'm of age to go to that. Yeah. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at Adepticon.
Well, thanks so much, Carl. See you soon.
Oh, I'm looking forward to kicking your butt at Adepticon.
Oh, we didn't talk about that. Can we quickly talk about that?
Oh, I'm
Carl?
afraid I stopped recording. Jody and I are prepared for our butt kicking.
Oh, I hope so. It's going to be one for the ages.
It is going to be fun. All right. Thanks, guys.
Adios, Carl.
If you're a true follower of chaos, enjoy killing Tau scum, fry devilfish for breakfast, drink the blood of fire warriors, collect the bones of Kroot fodder, desecrate the cockpits of mantas with demonic sigils, sing songs of chaotic praise and joy, when berserkers chain axe overwatching broadsides, helldrake bellflame shield drones into flying discs of spinning fire, and just all around bask in the path to glory, then the Shrine of Chaos podcast is a must-listen for you. I'm Mini Wargamer Dave from MiniWargaming.com, and I invite you to be a champion of chaos. Listen to the Shrine of Chaos podcast wherever podcasts are downloadable. Thank you, independent characters, for allowing this message from the Eye of Terror.
All right, so I want to thank Dan and Campbell for joining, giving us kind of their perspective there a little bit.
It's a fantastic interview from the Necro Badcast guys.
Yeah. You know what? I'm also disappointed we're not going to get to play those guys.
Yeah, super.
Yeah, that.
And I'm not, like, we had a plan.
Yeah,
we had a plan. So I knew.
we had 'em.
And
Well, we have flight
Dan
credit.
keeps messaging me.
Dan's
and he's
actually
like,
going to accuse you of canceling Adepticon to get out of getting.
That's
your butt
probably
kicked.
what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Dan keeps messaging me, going on about, you guys are talking all this,
Smack.
stuff. Yeah, smack. I like that word. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We're not talking. Like, what? You guys are like the 40K. You're the
Necromunda Badcast?
Necromunda Badcast. I'm like, I don't know. Oh yeah, you'll see. And I'm like, okay. Well, we got a plan, man. I go.
Well,
I don't know if it's gonna work. You guys are probably gonna roll us, but you're not gonna have as much fun rolling us as you think you're gonna have.
Yeah,
So Carl, you still have flight credits.
I do.
You still make it work.
I got stuff.
Yeah, just the two of us will just fly out. And
Yeah.
get a pickup.
Fly
game.
out, beat them, come home.
That's right.
That's how I would do it.
Sunglasses on. Slow walk. Cue slow walk.
We were gonna lose.
Yeah, we're gonna get
We were
rolled.
totally
It's
gonna
gonna be bad.
So we got Mr. Pink, Mr. Black, Mr. Yellow.
Yeah, whatever
White.
it takes. All right. So next out comes the Dark Uprising set. And along with that comes a new campaign style included in it, the Dark Uprising campaign, or just the Uprising campaign. And in this campaign, it works a little bit different. And we have not played this yet. We've read through a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about where this goes, just kind of top of the waves here. You have players aligning themselves to the law, the dark gods, or they remain neutral.
Right.
I got to tell you, like right off the bat, feels very 40K, right? In campaign systems, like a lot of times, like, oh, well, you have chaos and you have Imperium and all the Xenos.
Yeah.
All you Xenos, you get to work together, and it just, like, to a degree, I'm like, okay, but I think it's a little more doable.
There's less variety of factions
Yeah.
in
Yes.
compared to the greater 40K universe, but yeah, absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I mean, if there is a dark uprising, meaning, you know, all of a sudden chaos cults are coming up and people are going to have to make choices or decide to remain neutral or whatever. So I mean, I think that's the premise of the campaign.
Right.
They're still fighting for
Territories.
okay.
Yeah, so it's similar to the Dominion campaign in that gangs are fighting over territories predominantly.
Okay.
But much like the Law and Misrule campaign, there's a little twist to how that's happening, and that's going to affect how gangs are aligned, if they're aligned to the Dark Gods. Actually, a really cool thing is probably the good time to say what this does is there's actually kind of like an ebb of flow of chaos versus law in the Uprising campaign. And when you are playing your game, if chaos is ascendant at that time, there's going to be certain extra benefits.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
But there's also some downsides. If chaos is ascendant and one of your guys gets injured in that campaign phase or that particular time, then there's a +1 to what's happening to
It's
them
much more likely for them to be
on the serious injured chart as their wounds actually fester because Nurgle's setting in or something like that, which is it's pretty cool. It's just a fun additional layer that gives it a little bit different flavor compared to a Dominion campaign or a Law and Misrule
that
campaign.
feels very thematic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Starvation.
Yeah, so meat is a thing. I don't know the full exact mechanics because I haven't gone through it in depth yet since we're not playing this campaign currently. But there's a starvation mechanic and there's like a meat collection mechanic, and you guys get eaten.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a variation on the hostage / bounty.
It's exactly
mechanic.
instead of capturing people and selling them to guilders or sacrificing. Well, we'll get to that. You sacrifice them to the empty pit of the stomach and you eat people because there's actually kind of a resource mechanic of this
Hence
thing. Yeah.
the corpse grinder gang.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
gotta make that corpse starch.
And I noticed a lot of people, like on the Necromunda terrain building forums and that kind of thing, are building like corpse grinders.
That big old blood pit.
right?
Yeah. So cool.
That they just throw the bodies into and grind them up for paste.
So I
Couple
think-
knock to
so I
lift
think
crowns
green-
and you're there.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So you can change allegiances in this. You can go from law to chaos, that kind of thing.
Much
Neutral.
like the Law and Misrule.
Law and
Again,
Misrule.
certain gangs are going to be locked in. Like you're not going to get a chaos enforcer gang, and you're not going to get a law-abiding corpse grinder cult
Right.
or chaos cultist gang.
Right.
They're kind of locked into
kinda
those
locked in.
factions. The fun thing is with the house gangs is they're a little more fluid and they can pick and choose depending. Oh, chaos is doing really well right now. Maybe I'll check out and see what chaos is doing. Like I'm going to read their pamphlet. And,
Free haircuts.
yeah, exactly.
Well, and it makes for some really amazing modeling opportunities
absolutely.
as well.
for sure.
And
for sure.
I would say the Book of Peril, which we'll get into in a minute here, adds some really fun just additional bonuses again for modeling opportunities.
Book of Ruin.
but also
Book of Ruin.
Right.
Not Peril.
Did
You said
I
Book
keep
of Ruin.
mixing it up? Sorry. So Book of Ruin is going to add some fun options for not only gameplay but also some modeling opportunities.
Okay. So again, the interesting thing about the campaigns is you said at the beginning of the show is they are all fairly familiar. Like if you're familiar with the Dominion campaign, everything else is kind of a variation of the Dominion campaign. The
Much
structure.
like the Forge World Imperial Armor
That's exactly what I
campaigns,
was gonna
they're
compare.
using the same kind of formula or structure, if you will, but then
Flavoring
It's
it a little
it's a flavor to taste depending, and these are very thematic flavorings of which direction you want to take your.
And you
campaign.
can tell that kind of by the triumphs too.
Yeah,
So what are the
absolutely.
triumphs in this one?
So this one has, again, they're going to be themed to the Dark Gods or Law. First one is going to be Champion of the Dark Gods, which is whoever wins the most games for Chaos specifically. Scion of the Imperium is going to be win the most games for Order or the Law side. Flesh Harvester, who's whoever gets the most meat.
I love that one of the scenarios is just meat.
It's called meat with lots of vowels in there. Meat. Icon of Salvation, the most gang members on the roster at the end of the campaign. So it's whoever has the
Largest
biggest,
gang.
the largest gang.
Right.
Yep. Legendary status is going to be the gang with the highest reputation. Reputation is, if you notice, a pretty consistent theme, regardless of which campaign type you're playing. Reputation is important.
Right.
It's bragging rights.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
survivors, player who suffers the least amount of deaths.
I thought that was
Okay.
a cool add-on. I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, that is kind of nice. that is kind of nice.
Because if your guys get turned into meat, they're not participating ananymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we touched on kind of the cool, flavorful things here, which no pun intended. The festering injuries, the ebb and flow of the law and chaos thing having a factor in benefits and drawbacks. And then the limitations, again, I think you're struggling under the same kind of...
I'd say maybe the one additional limitation is if you have a ton of order-specific gangs and a ton of misrule or chaos-specific gangs, there's not going to be a lot of that kind of fun switching and interaction on that. So it takes away a level of that decision-making.
It's kind of the same thing in like Horus Heresy gaming where you're like, oh yeah, I'm playing Imperial Fist, I'm playing Ultramarines, I'm playing Salamanders.
Right.
High fives everywhere.
Why are we fighting?
Yeah. Right. No, I think this, Don, you were mentioning that there initially was like 6 enforcer gangs. I think in light of the Dark Uprising core box, if 3 or 4 or 5 people in an area picked up that box, well, then you'd have this, pardon the pun, glut of flesh grinders as well as enforcers. Right. Well, and then this is perfect. Like you wouldn't have the house gang switching, but then that ebb and flow between the two powers of
is actually fantastic.
Right, would be super interesting.
So that's an interesting benefit.
If you get a couple of randoms mixed in there, then
watching them flow back and forth would be kind of cool.
Right, that little power meter like in a fight game.
Or that's kind of cool. If you have three law gangs and 3 like locked in misrule gangs, and then you have 2 Orlock gangs or something like that, and just kind of seeing how they bounce around depending on the flow could be interesting. But
I think so depending on how your factions are balanced, I think that ultimately was my point. Is that this one seems like that's what's this offering? Well, depending on the balance of factions, especially in light of again Dark Uprising, this could really be something that takes advantage of those specific factions.
It's a good point. It's a really good point. Yeah. So then we launch into Book of Ruin, which is kind of supplemental material that adds to the Dark Uprising box set that came out. Not to say it's required you get the Dark Uprising box set. It is absolutely not. You can pick up Book of Ruin and you're good to go. If you're already
you have to have the core rulebook.
Experience. You have to have the core rulebook. You're already playing, and then you're like, hey, this is the next expansion. It's Book of Ruin for you. Adds a number of cool things.
It does indeed.
Corpse Grinder Cult is in there.
Yep. Gene Stealer Cult.
Chaos Cults. I mean, again,
all the cults.
This is one of my favorites because I'm a big Chaos player. So I look at this thing and I'm like, oh man, honestly, if this had come out prior to me getting my Goliath gangs painted, I'd probably be playing Chaos Cultists at this point. So,
yeah, it's funny because I am playing a Hellic Cult and I'm very excited about them. I'm enjoying them a lot. I'm again have that one singular goal. One of the unique things is they can, if they capture somebody, they can sacrifice them to a dark god, and that's really all I want from this campaign is to sacrifice somebody. I got one of your guys.
So what happens?
No, you got one of mine. I got one of Matt's guys.
What happens if you sacrifice the guy?
I can beseech the dark gods, which is actually really neat because in campaign play, anybody can do this. Is you can do a ritual to the dark gods and then beseech the gods, and you pick which god you're beseeching to, and if you're successful you get this massive boon in your next game.
I assume successful meaning you roll dice,
you check a chart, you add some modifiers and yada yada yada. The guy dies or he doesn't die, or he turns into a spawn,
which is
also excellent.
Can you then use them in your next
yeah
oh my
as
god,
a spawn?
Spawn would be so good.
You can use your own guys, it's just less fun. But one of your own dudes can be the focus of the the ritual, because it's not a
sacrifice your own guy.
Well, if it goes wrong, you just ritual it. You just have a ritual. So and other gangs again in the Uprising campaign can choose to beseech and move into these rituals, whereas the Hellic cults or the Chaos cults, it's just part of their shtick.
And if you have the favor of Tzeentch, you ignore to hit penalties.
Yeah, all of the boons are super good.
It sucks.
Not to be against it.
Well, no, not for them.
To be on the other side.
On the other side of that, yeah.
The other cool thing.
I'm a double hardcover. I don't care.
The other cool thing added here is the Gene Stealer cults.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had a bunch of Gene Stealer cult models, and I think I gave them to you or to Matt or somebody. Yeah, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to use these. Book of Ruin. Ah, dang it! I totally could have used these guys.
Matt's got a pile of arms if you want to add a third arm.
So one of the cool things about it is they can infect other gangs, or gangs can choose to be infected.
You
by
can
them.
petition the cult to basically induct you into the cult of many armed emperor.
Yeah.
And a neat thing that you can do is your leader can become a psyker. They can actually gain psychic powers.
Yeah.
Which is real good.
Real helpful.
Yeah. And then certain gangers can actually grow out a third arm.
Yeah.
Which is pretty neat if they have a heavy weapon because it changes the action from a double action to
a single action.
To shoot. To a single action, so you can move and shoot, you can aim and shoot instead because you've got 3 arms. So it makes this unwieldy weapon much more manageable.
And then what's the drawback?
You're ugly.
You're now a chaos and an outlaw cult,
Right.
And they're going to be selling off your people rather than you recovering them. It's no. You're worth whatever your value is, and that's rough.
The Gene Stealer cult actually has a lot of downsides for being Gene Stealers. They can't go to the dock.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
get discovered.
They're aliens.
They'll
Yeah,
get found out.
They can't uncover that there's this genetic manipulation happening. If you capture and sell one of their dudes, I think they're worth full points.
Yeah.
Or most guys that you're selling to the guild are worth half credits.
Half points, yeah.
Gene Stealer cult, because the guilds are real interested in what's going on here, that they'll give you a full price of that ganger. So they have a couple things going against it. The nice thing about the Book of Ruin is that it does specify how these gangs interact in a Dominion campaign also.
Right.
It'll say they count as a Caldor gang when you're going for territories and things like that. And both the Corpse Grinder cult, the Chaos Helots, and Gene Stealer cults all have a specific call out of how they interact within them.
Right.
Which is a very nice way to add them into the original campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have a guy, Kyle, did a Chaos War band, and he themed it on Call of Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, neat.
And he had this guy was the King in Yellow, and his psyker was real special, and he had this one thing that looked like an octopus coming up out of the ground, and I mean just some really cool modeling opportunities.
Yeah.
That you can do for it.
I think there's an element of if you're going to play
to fight against
chaos, there is that part of you that likes doing that kind of stuff. Yeah. I was like, no, I'm just going to use the generic good old Dark Vengeance cultist. I'm going to be. No, I didn't. No. I mean, I made like 30 guys, and I've got like all kinds of things, and I had to make a custom dude, and I found this creepy little kid to follow my leader around, and it's all great.
Their bases.
They're done now.
I know.
That's awesome.
My back. Yeah. One other thing that's in the Book of Ruin is I got too many names in my head right now. Is the favors option, which I think is a really neat twist that you can. Literally, it's called out as the arbitrator can just choose to tack this on if they want or not. And what it allows is that house gangs and cults can beseech the larger house that they are beholden to.
Petition the house.
They can petition the house. Yeah. And it's more of how does it work in the game? You roll a chart and you look some stuff up and things happen.
But it's cool results.
But they're cool. Or garbage. Like the house could be like, no, we're cutting ties to you for a while. Oh God, no, that's bad. But it's this other narrative beat of things that the Arbiter can throw in. And I love that a lot of the books I think are going to keep going that route of like, hey, here's another thing you can throw on. Here's another thing you can throw on. And something that Dan and Campbell were really vocal about on their show that I think is a great point is the Book of Ruin has a lot of scenarios in it. Yes. There is, if you are wanting variety and you're an arbiter, the getting the Book of Ruin becomes worthwhile just for that. And I mean, and it's got, meat in it. So, who doesn't want that?
There are a ton of scenarios.
Yeah, there's like vegans.
It's like 16, I want to say, but
maybe they're preventing the loss of meat. I'm good now.
Okay. So then Book of Ruin, I think, is fantastic. Honestly, amazing.
It's a beautiful supplement.
Every supplement that comes out, I get more and more impressed with, even though it is becoming more and more complicated as to where things are. Like I get it, but that's kind of you're in for a penny and for a pound on this game with that.
Specialist games.
Yep. It is not for the faint of heart.
And the Book of Ruin is particular. I mean, it's 3 books. Like if you're like, no, I really want to play a Gene Stealer cult. Okay, but you're gonna have to buy 3 books.
Yeah, that is true.
And I want to play a Hell cult.
Yeah, the 2 core and then this.
Yeah, so it is a 3-book minimum.
It's interesting you're talking about the scenarios and the arbitrators, options there. And if you look at, I like how they basically throw a lot of stuff in there specifically for the arbitrator and for the narrative beats. In the Book of Peril, when they talk about the bad zones, and they're basically like death worlds. I mean, you roll on it, and there's these things that happen in these different bad zones. But almost every one of them has either an arbitrator's note or a designer's note that kind of talks about how to tie it in. What does it mean?
It's
how
so
do you
helpful.
use it. Really, really
so
cool.
helpful to hear
Well
the
done.
intention of what they meant to do there.
Across the entire range of books in there, there's some very useful little arbitrator notes. There's actually an arbitrator tools specific section in several of the books, and then the design notes of, hey, this is how this thing's supposed to work. Because
which is nice.
There are some clunky interactions in Necromunda, which
there's many.
There are. But
I was going to say that there's all these cool beats, but you're going to have to look for them. Like let us not play light with that of like, no, Arbiter, you got your work cut out for you.
It's up to you of how you want to string them all together.
Yeah, you're going to have to do your
from, and you got lots of options, and you flavor the entirety of the campaign to taste. Like
and I mean, if you are a first time Arbiter, what I would say is,
hey, Dominion's great.
Go with Dominion.
Start out
there. Ask for help. Look at Goonhammer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of useful information there. There's articles on the Warhammer community that talk about how to, what your responsibilities are.
A lot of them,
It's like 15 or something articles.
How to arbitrate stuff.
Yeah. So very, very useful stuff. All that
you know what? Those arbitrator articles actually can give you a lot of input on just how to run a general campaign for 40K.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's how to run stuff. It's really good
relevant.
resource just for that.
Yeah.
Because I've been a lot of questions since the narrative episode about, hey, I'm doing this. How do I run this? Or how would those articles?
Take a look at those.
Yeah, they're really good for that.
Yeah. So then, real quick, I just wanted to throw in there that a few issues ago, White Dwarf came out, and there was a supplement included with it in the bag. It's a cardstock, cover on it. It's maybe 8 pages long, called Necromunda Gang Raids, and it's an add-on that these are basically small raids that are kind of beneath the notice of like the gang leader. Maybe your few guys are like, I really hate that guy over in that other gang, and I just want to beat him out. So you ambush him, or you have a fight in the bar or something along those lines. They are smaller Necromunda games, and
great for downtime,
meant to be played kind of in like 30 minutes to an hour long. Very short scenarios.
It's smaller tables. It's like a 2x2 table instead of a 4x4 is your standard for
several missions. One called Daylight Robbery, the Mercator Storehouse Heist. So you guys go and just try to rob a store.
Just grab stuff.
Clandestine Rendezvous and Bar Brawl. And just a cool little supplement.
Yeah.
Like totally
with
White Dwarf. I mean, first off,
awesome.
speaks to the value of White Dwarf.
Yes, for sure. Yep.
If you're playing Necromunda, this is a cool supplement.
All good bonus stuff. Neat mechanics too of how they addressed it, because you're playing with a smaller gang. Like your bottle check is a D3 instead of a D6 plus the number of dudes. That just to compensate for the scale of the gang. So it's a one simple little rule tweak that changes a pretty big benefit. Mechanic of the game. So, it's smart.
I don't remember what issue it was in that it came out, but you can find it on eBay. I don't know if they have it digitally available either. So I don't think so. But if you can get your hands on it,
that's a good
question. It's a nice little supplement to have.
Yep. And if you're using, Matt and I were actually just talking about this last time he and I played Necromunda, and we were talking about that if you're using the rule like Dan's suggestion that you took about, you have your game day and you earn income there, but the in-between games, between game days, if you get a pickup game, you don't earn income. Matt and I were both like, man, I would much rather, now knowing what we know, play 2 or 3 of these and then be real strategic about which guys I'm putting in harm's way and, how much damage. But because I can still get experience for those targeted guys, that it might be a way to mitigate some of another risk. Balancing,
absolutely.
Another lever knob, as you were saying.
Alex did a really cool one, for example, where he said everybody has 100 credits to make up a Juve, or basically a regular dude, and they're going to fight in this gymnasium. And it was like a kill team size board. And the object is all 4 of you have one dude who's going to go into the gymnasium, and only one guy can come out, and that's the guy who gets promoted to go into a gang.
Highlander.
Yeah. And
that's great. I love stuff
it was
like
a really fun way to do it. But it's just a real simple thing. Same thing with the D3 bottles and the whole bit. You could do some really minor tweaks and have some really fun scenarios, but you're not endangering the entire crew.
Right.
Right.
Smart.
And because games are so quick, like we were talking about, because our game day had been postponed because of Adepticon, we were going to potentially do a game night on a weeknight and just have everybody run a couple of these short missions to get a variety of players together. Yeah. To get through them quick games and then get a little money back into the gangs.
Really, really cool.
Yeah.
I was super excited when I saw this. And it's pretty high quality.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I was impressed with it.
Okay. Yak Tribe. You've heard us talk about it a little bit.
Yep.
Josh introduced us to it. I was not aware of it beforehand.
Invaluable.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a tool.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And we're saying Yak Tribe. That's YAKTRIBE.
Yeah.
.games.
.games. You can search for it on Google and come up.
It'll pull up.
So
first call out is if you're playing Modern Necromunda, you want to use the Underhive tools section of Yak Tribe rather than the actual Necromunda tools section, because that is classic Necromunda.
Right.
So Underhive specifically will get you all the modern gangs, all the updated prices, all that stuff. And what Yak Tribe does is essentially it's a campaign management system, but it's also a gang management system.
Yep.
And what you can build your gang, you set whatever your starting credits is, you build your individual dudes, you give them whatever equipment that it'll default whatever equipment they start with.
Then you can buy equipment.
And then you can buy equipment.
And then you can print out their cards.
You print out your cards, but then
That's
you can
really
also
nice.
print out the gang roster. So you get the whole thing and you can track really quickly and easily during the course of a game of who's gaining experience for doing what, but the gang cards are right there and they have all your stats, all your weapon profiles, everything like that, and it's
and then you go back after your game and you complete, hey, this is what happened. I check. I had this amount of money.
XP.
And, experience. You can say specifically, oh, this guy got a promotion. He got an advancement is what they're called. And then you can specifically choose what that advancement was and then adjust the stats or the skills or whatever.
With the injuries on there.
The lasting injuries you can.
And so for tracking a campaign, you were talking earlier how it shows a map of the territories, which is awesome.
So there's
color-coded.
Shows all the gangs' rating and their reputation at a glance.
There's a couple of different ways to sort it. So you can sort it by, I think, who has the most kills, who has the greatest wealth, who has the highest reputation, who has the most territories, which is, as a Dominion campaign, those are a lot of the metrics that you're tracking these triumphs by. So it's a very, very easy way to, at just a quick glance,
Jody, you had
see where everybody stands.
Some comments here about.
Yeah, so
I ran into some problems too.
It's a great tool, and I don't want to I'm gonna
just be careful.
Like, God forbid I be critical.
No, that's not. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about when you're using.
When
tool.
you're using it, be careful. Yes.
So do be careful because it will.
Don't call Yak Tribe a disease.
Here we go. Oh, damn it, Carl. So you treat you. When it calculates your initial starting wealth, we haven't figured out why, but it hiccups pretty hard on some people's gangs.
Yeah, Venators it's a problem with too.
A big part of it is
I had a problem
when you choose your guy. It was about half the people in our group had an issue, and I wasn't.
I think, but I felt like I did something.
But then you rebuilt your gang, and it was
I was
perfect.
fine.
So
I was
most
sure
of the time
I did
it is
wrong.
a human error, and it's very simple to make an error because there are a couple options. When you buy a person, there's an option: do you want to use credits or not? You want to use credits, so it's coming out of your stash. When you buy equipment, there's a plus sign which just adds equipment to them. So you're not paying credits to add equipment to that person. You're just getting equipment.
And which is, I think, what I did, because then you were like, how do you have all this money?
That's
and I'm
what
like,
most people do.
Oh.
Yeah. So what you need to do is you need to hit the buy equipment button, not the plus equipment button. So there's a little bit of a learning curve, but aside from that.
And when you get rid of equipment, you can either drop it or sell it.
But listen, here's the thing.
You actually technically you should move it to your stash.
To your stash.
When you sell equipment, there's actually a roll because you don't get full credit back when you sell
and here's one of the
equipment.
other issues I had with it as well is that it was allowing me to buy equipment that my gang wasn't allowed to have.
Oh, that's weird. That's definitely
I was able to buy stuff from the black market, and my guys weren't supposed to be able to do that.
Right.
Well, what are you doing that for then, Don?
So don't
clearly
do
you've
it.
changed the
Why are you even looking there?
Well,
why are you even looking in the black market?
Well, I didn't. I just was looking at equipment that was available.
Undercover enforcer.
Right.
There
and
it
so
it's like
Venator, I was bounty hunters. And then
So like I'm always going to think of you as an enforcer.
So the
He's
arbitrator's
like the Don
like,
Johnson of
how the heck did you get armor weave? I'm like, it was an option. I bought it. I said, no, you can't have that.
Sadly, I would
listen.
like
I mean, but this is
that's a Venator's problem.
All things considered, though.
awesome tool.
When you look at this tool, for how powerful it is, it is actually pretty intuitive to figure out. Like a little bit of playing, and you got it figured out. And it is not that hard.
90% of the problem is people hitting the plus button because it's a natural thing. Oh, I want to add equipment. Hit the plus button, but you need to hit the buy button instead of the plus.
I'm telling you, we have software at my work that is way less intuitive than this and not as powerful.
Well, and the thing they did that's super smart is you can go in and manually adjust your credits.
Yes.
Which is ultimately what I end up doing every time.
to fix the
I
problem.
know I do it on paper and I keep track of it. And I'm like, I know my wealth rating's wrong, so I'm just going to go in and adjust my credits. I know my gangers are right. I know how many credits I have. Cool.
See, I
Update
knew
that
mine
and
was
move on.
wrong when you pointed it out, Josh. And then I just said, okay. And I wiped that gang and I recreated it from scratch, and I was right. I was like, I did something wrong.
The one thing that's getting thrown off is the wealth. So wealth doesn't matter until the end of the campaign. And it's very easy to track because it's gang rating plus equipment in your stash plus credits. That's your wealth. And that's a one-time calculation at the end of the campaign, and we're going.
Right.
So it's not a big deal for having your wealth out of whack.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, for me, that was cool about Yak Tribes is that there's also a forum that's part of that website.
Yep.
And I actually found that a
all
very nice
inclusive.
resource.
Some super helpful information.
And graphically, it's designed well. Like honestly, this is one of the most professional tools I've ever seen for
free.
For free.
It's amazing.
I am shocked Games Workshop has not bought this yet, because there are other things like Games Workshop in the past may have come and it's like, oh, we're going to shut this down.
Yeah.
Now I think they would seriously look at this thing, and I'll bet you they have looked at it and said, is this worth us purchasing at this point? Because there was that guy who created the one for Age of Sigmar that they were like, we'll buy it from you, help us develop it and we'll pay you, I think,
and I love that.
Who knows if they haven't already approached them, I mean, we don't know.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool.
What a great,
and lest I
tool.
come off like complaining that my free ice cream is not gold enough.
You are definitely getting free ice cream because you're getting extra money.
It's true.
Yeah.
My point in all of that was to say, just be careful when you're navigating it, that it is a fantastic tool. There are a couple very minor but meaningful navigation things.
Trust, but verify.
Yeah, basically.
Well said, sir.
It's
like
the same
you do
thing
this
with
for a living.
Battle Scribe and the old Army Builder, all those kinds of things.
Trust but verify.
Right, trust but verify. Don't say, oh, well, that's what it said in Battle Scribe, so it's automatically true.
Yeah. Yep. So I was glad you actually caught my error because I was like, oh, man. That would have screwed up something big.
I would say 4 out of the 8 people in our group had the same, and it was just a wealth issue, which, again, isn't a big deal.
Yeah. So a great tool. I don't even know who made that thing, but man, hats off to you guys. That's incredible.
I would be a little bit sad to try and play, frankly, without it. Like,
it's
legit,
spoiled
it's
us.
that good.
It spoiled us right from the
I
get-go.
love being able to print out the cards.
Oh, it's so good.
Because I just cut them out, and then I use them to track my experience on and put the ready markers on them and stuff.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. All right.
I would say we'd also be remiss without mentioning yet again Goonhammer.
Trust me, they mention it plenty in their interview.
Specifically,
just stop.
The tactic cards is the one thing we haven't spoken to, which they have so Dan has specifically put.
They've
together
written
some
incredible
really great
articles.
that just runs down tactic cards.
Dan and Campbell are huge fans of Necromunda. I couldn't do this episode without talking to them a bit, and I'm more than happy to get them and Goonhammer your attention because it's a great resource and it's getting better by the day. They really have turned it into one of the most positive and productive sites for Games Workshop stuff.
A super useful resource across
really
multiple systems.
Yep. Yeah, because maybe we'll talk at the end, but the tactics cards are something we didn't really touch on.
No, because it's not really like that's more core to the game.
Yeah, but it's an issue in terms of playing the campaigns because there
are some that they say don't use. Yeah,
there are a ton of tactics cards, and there are some that are specific to each individual gang. Some have more than others, and then there's some that are kind of generic.
And there's some that if you go to Goonhammer, like they've said, we pull this one out and this one out.
Well, I understand. That's what I'm saying is that for somebody who's jumping into Necromunda, the tactics cards can be super overwhelming. And we had people who basically vapor locked when they had to pick 12 tactics cards. And that's why resources like Goonhammer are really important to be able to kind of weed through some of that stuff. And for arbitrators to be able to say, okay, for these scenarios, no, you can't use the tactic that turns all the lights off. Or you can't use the one that knocks everybody off the...
You keep getting stuck on those two. I'm predicting something bad happened to Adon.
Yes, the lights being off really was an issue. But my point is that...
I love it when the lights are off.
Well, it actually is good for close combat guys. But My point being that it can be very overwhelming if
Sure.
you don't know that these tools are available and you don't avail yourselves of them.
Yeah.
I would echo
I agree.
and back up what Adon says here, and also, and I've said this before, Necromunda is a lot of fun, but it is a game. When Doug and I played, Doug made a great point of like he rolled and something terrible happened, and then like a grenade deviated back and blew his guy up, and he was like, if I was playing 40K right now, I would be livid. I would be like freaking out about my dice rolls. And he's like, when I play Necromunda, I just laugh it off. If
You're
that
bought
is
into
not
it. Yeah.
something that you as a gamer know you're going to be comfortable with, that I rolled this entire game and every time I rolled a hit, I failed to wound or I didn't hit. And that's how the entire game went. That was largely our game. Like my guys did
Yeah, it was my last game.
nothing.
My
This is-
game against Anthony was that way.
But this is also not to say that there are not strategies and tactics to this game.
No,
I mean, like,
no, I'm not
yeah.
saying
Oh, no,
that at all.
absolutely.
I just want to be clear. Like, this game is not all random happens.
But no, that's not his point, I
That's
think.
not. I'm sorry if that came off that way. That is not my point.
I'm not saying that's your point. I'm saying that's kind of, I feel like, what we've been pushing for the whole thing. Like, oh, well, you roll on this table and random stuff happens. And you
Sure.
know, yes, those things do happen. But there is absolutely strategy to this game
yeah.
and tactics to this game that you need to understand in order to be successful.
Yeah, definitely.
Or you'll get rolled.
It's the
Yes.
game itself, I guess, a good point of comparison for people. I mean, you guys probably already did this in the Kill Team versus Necromunda episode, but it's very similar mechanics to Kill Team, but then there's extra layers of crunch on top of that, and tactics absolutely are going to play into that, and how you're going to interact with everything and all the levers you need to pull and the actions specifically you're going to use, because it's not just move, shoot. It's you've got 2 actions.
Yep.
And you got a whole list of things you want to do with those.
The skills that you have, the tactics that you, the cards that
forgetting
you
to
have,
use some of
all
my
that
skills
stuff.
too.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think all of that stuff is. My point has 100% agree with every bit of that. Is that because of those layers of crunch and things, and because you are rolling on some tables and things are going to happen, it's not going to play out fair.
Yeah.
If you are somebody who is supremely concerned about balance, if you are one of the people who really gets worked up about points values, that's really important to you about,
Forget about
are they equitable?
it's not
This
a balance
may
game.
not be the game for you. And that was really all the point I wanted to make is it's a fantastic game. It creates these stories like no other game I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Blood Bowl. I love Blood Bowl, as we all well know. Blood Bowl wishes it created the level of narrative that Necromunda
Absolutely.
does.
There's things in Blood Bowl though, like when I would hear
It has the fun
Back in
paperwork,
the-
but not the same.
It's
back in the day
not
of
as
World's
narrative.
End Radio when they were all into 40K
Right.
and Blood Bowl back then, and I remember them talking about these Blood Bowl leagues they were playing. This is before the re-release of Blood Bowl, where like players, and this is what I liked about, and this is kind of what I like about Necromunda. Players outside of it would be bribing each other or bribing other players to hurt other not players personally, but hurt the other team members.
Right.
You know, the guys on the team. Like, if you can take that guy out, I'm going to pay you 500 gold or whatever. You know, I love that kind of meta level of
The people rolling the dice are coaches, the players. that are on the field.
right,
Yeah.
right.
One point I'll point out, again, this being a small scale skirmish game, is that you are rolling less dice in general compared to a game
Oh,
like
it's
40K.
so fast.
Yeah.
It's so fast.
But not only
But-
speed, but if you
The
have
luck.
cold dice, they're not necessarily going to balance out in the
Right.
course of a game
Right.
because you're not rolling all that many dice throughout
Yep.
the
Right.
entirety of a game.
That is
so
very true.
Some games are going to be a
Swinging.
bad dice game, and that's just a fact of it. So Necromunda can be unbalanced, it can be silly, but it's always going to be fun.
Yeah, and
But I think-
it's going. I'm gonna have fun when I roll 2 ones in a row and my guy falls off the edge of a building and then hits a ledge and then falls off the edge of that building again and then hits the ground and didn't die, but then the guy in the opposing gang runs over, kicks him in the head, and then he actually dies and gives up an experience point.
I got to be okay with that.
You got to be okay with that because that can really turn people off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You had a point.
I was going to say almost exactly what Jody just said. No,
Sorry.
I mean,
Oh, cool. Well, good job.
No, I mean, if you're not willing to sit there and go, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Yeah, if
You
you,
know,
can't
just
be
kinda
Homer
play
in
it out.
Springfield Gorge.
That's like that's like a Bugs Bunny thing.
Yeah,
right.
right.
Where he was
And-
like falling
when he's
down.
describing, I'm picturing a
Yeah.
Warner Brothers
Springfield
cartoon,
Gorge.
right?
yeah,
Perfect analogy.
Homer Simpson, Springfield Gorge. Dope.
that one too.
Yeah. And this is very much a veteran player's game.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is
without
not if you have a friend who's not done any miniature wargaming, do not start them on this game. Now, having said that, if you have somebody who's a super heavy duty RPG player, then this could actually work.
Yeah.
Because they're used to that level, especially if they played Traveler. If they're used to
Or
the
first
level
edition
of
Dungeons and
first
Dragons,
edition,
AD&D.
they're used to the crunch levels, and actually Pathfinder first edition at this point.
Fickle dice rolls.
Right, and all that kind of stuff, and the pre-action and post-action. I mean, the way I look at it, it's a skirmish game, but it's not quick.
I will tell you why
Right?
I like this game, like the fun paperwork of this game, is because when I used to play first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I would take pride in filling out every box in the AD&D character sheet.
Oh wow!
From first edition. Like I set out from the get-go, I'm like, I'm gonna fill out everything here. Then I will feel complete.
Yeah,
and that's how I feel about Necromunda.
but you know, it's as Josh was saying, it's a skirmish game, but it's not quick. It's not quick to play. Right? There's stuff before the game. There's stuff after the game. It takes time to do it well.
The play of the game is
The
quick.
game itself,
the game itself is
quite
quick.
The
when you're
after
familiar.
action and the before action takes
Right,
a little
what
bit
I'm saying
of
is that
time. Agreed.
It is a skirmish game, but it's not quick overall. It's not a quick experience.
In the campaign it's
Right. In the campaign it's not. Right.
Okay.
But as we said, that's where you want to play it.
That's right.
Well, right. Yeah, sure.
So with that thought, we're going to go ahead and take a break, come back, and close out the show. All right, and thank you for listening to episode 203 of the Independent Characters Necromunda Campaigns. You know, the thing that drives me nuts, and I've said this 100 times, is I really wish Kill Team would take a piece from Necromunda and come out with a campaign system that worked great for Kill Team. Like,
as long as it works better than the
dying.
Necromunda does, I'd be fine with that.
You just need fun paperwork for Kill Team.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
totally down
I
with that.
100% agree.
So, Don, a little bit of you do not.
I do not agree with what you said. No.
Okay,
I'm with you, and I'm with Don.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
Why?
I love Necromunda for what it is.
Yeah.
I love Kill Team for what it is. I don't want. It's not chocolate and peanut butter here.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't want random, like, my Space Marine grows a third arm, but I'd love to see a more in-depth campaign for Kill Team as an option.
Sure. I mean, more the merrier. Hey, if that's how you want to do it, that's how you want to do it. But what I get from Kill Team, what I get from Kill Team, and what I get from Necromunda, it is like I said, it's not chocolate and peanut butter where I'm like, hey, if we rub these together, we might have something good. It's chocolate and spinach, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure those can stay separate. I like them both, but I don't want them together. Don, what were you thinking?
No, I'm just not a super fan of
Necromunda.
The levels of crunch and the. I feel like there's a we're positive. It's nothing but no, I don't hate anything. I'm just disappointed. I think.
Listen, dude, you can be critical of this. This is fine.
Yeah. No,
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
I feel like there's a serious runaway mechanic.
Yeah,
issue with this.
I don't think anybody's arguing with that.
We never mentioned it at all, really, during the course of the game, the show, and it's really easy to end up just getting your face bashed in every game, and you don't really have a chance to not get your face bashed in. I don't have a problem with, we both have 1,000 credit guys, and I go in there and I roll stupid, and my guy falls on his face and goes down the hill and gets kicked in the head. Okay, that's fine. And it can be funny and fun, and the Commissar shoots himself in the head. I know it was 40K, but similar kinds of things. What I don't like is when I show up to the table and I know there's absolutely no chance that I'm going to be able to do anything at all in this game, and then I choose to bottle out and then lose a reputation because of it, and so I'm stepping backwards. And so why am I playing this game? And
if you get to that point, you should have mechanics built in, though. Like if you're severely underrated, you get extra tactics cards, or you get free hive dudes.
And here's the thing: so if you get free hive dudes, right? Where does that model come from? If you don't have that model, then you can't do that. So if you don't know that going in that you're going to need that, and you haven't, if you don't have like a stash of extra dudes, which I didn't, this is a mechanic I didn't really know about. The other thing is that when you're playing with other people who don't know the game that well, like the arbitrator's not standing over your shoulder, they don't necessarily know that you get that benefit, and you don't necessarily know you get that benefit because you haven't read through all 17 books that you need to be able to play the game, then okay, 4. If
You're
playing
exaggerating
Cult,
slightly,
you need
but
3.
sure.
We said if you play GCL Cult, you need 3 books, right?
Not 17.
I was
there's
being
a lot
hyperbolic.
to know.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed. And those rules are spread out across those 3 books.
And if you have the core rule book, the weapons profiles are not in there. Right. And so I have to buy another book separate to my game
that's
book
a different
to just get the weapons profiles.
So you're talking about a different
but
issue
it ties in, right? So because I don't have the time or the knowledge that I need to read through all these different things, I don't necessarily know that there's these balancing mechanics. I don't necessarily know what I need to be able to do to walk in to do this. And so when I just get my face smashed without, the guy afterwards saying, "Oh, wow, you were that far underrated. We could have done X, Y, Z." Oh, well, it's nice to know that.
So let me ask you just a simple question. Is this the first Necromunda campaign you've played? So, I mean, there's a learning curve. I think without a doubt.
As a player and an arbiter.
There's absolutely a learning curve to the system.
Sure.
And it's a steep one.
And I think that some of the things that we ran into, so there's a couple issues. One, I think that there's the social contract with this game. And these aren't all just my thoughts. I've talked to our game group and Rob and Alex and some of those guys about their thoughts on this too. But the social contract is super important in this, right? That you really want to be able to come in with the idea that both of you are here to have a good time, right? And if you have a player who knows how to get all the little upgrades they want, knows how to get all the little things that they want, and come in with a super high rated game and just chooses not to necessarily help the new guy know that how he can balance the things out so he can smash them and get more reputation, then you're not gonna have a good time, right? That guy may have enjoyed himself, right? But if you don't have a strong social contract within the group about, no, we're all here to help each other out and have a good time, and don't nuke the baby seal, then I think you're going to have a better way to go up front. And I think that
do you not think that would be kind of the same?
That's true of any game.
40K with Age of Sigmar.
No, I don't. I'm saying it with Necromunda because of the levels of crunch and the level of things. You have to have a stronger social contract going in because it is so narrative. Because there isn't the number of dice that you roll, so it can get really swingy. This is where it goes back to the centralized versus decentralized games. When you have people who have played a lot and people who've never played, I think it's super important to make sure you have more centralized games where the arbitrators there and there's other seasoned players there who can see something happening and kind of go, you know what, that's not cool.
But I think,
did you know you could do this?
But I think a lot of what you're stating is from an experience with a first time Necromunda campaign group. I think there's ways to mitigate that, and I think there are learning curves, and I think that's part of the point of. I don't want to say the point, but that's part of the draw or setback of specialist games, that they are a little more complex, right?
No, I agree. And I spent a lot of money and time on buying and building these Forge World models, which wasn't really the way to go with Venator Gang, as it turned out. Yeah, right.
Look, I equipped my Goliath guys out. I built them, and I was like, oh, I don't know if this was a good idea the way I built. And it turns out not so much.
No, not so much. And for me, and again, this is just for me.
That's fine.
It would take a lot for me to step in another Necromunda campaign.
Interesting.
The time, the effort, the money, the brain power that went into doing this.
Yeah. You'd rather do something else.
I didn't have fun. There are things that I have more fun with that I feel more comfortable with.
Totally understandable.
That's just me.
No, totally understandable.
And I think what I'm hearing you say, Adon, is that yes, that's true of any game system, but the rules system in Necromunda, it can exacerbate that problem.
I would actually agree.
And again, here's the thing. Alex, who ran ours, did an awesome job. He tried really hard to help people out. He did the weekly, updates and nice little write-ups. He tried to coach people along. He had to deal with player melt. He had to deal with
being an arbitrator is not easy.
The decentralized game system, and and he tried. I mean, he was doing re-rolls for me on injuries that he didn't have to do. Right, he was trying to help it out because he saw that I was basically spiraling. Right, but ultimately, some of it has to do with the game system. In my personal opinion, I don't play second edition D&D for a reason.
Cool.
It's unforgiving. I think
Yeah.
that's fair. And I think that speaks
That is
to
fair.
my earlier point of like, hey, just know what you're getting into. That said, I'm ramping up for a second campaign already. So,
Yeah.
you know, in which I'm trying to figure out which house gang I want to play. Because now that I did this weird offshoot gang, I'm
You're like, oh, I
I'll-
see. Yeah.
I do. But now I'm like, oh, but these House of Chains and this House of Daggers or whatever it's called.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about those.
Yeah, well, they're not really fully developed yet. So, but like, you know, while I share a lot of Adon's points, my experience is still very different.
Right.
I'm ready to go back. And you said if you're not having fun, well, what are you doing here? Like,
do something else.
There are a lot
Well,
of
and-
really
and see,
fun games to enjoy.
And as a hobbyist, as a modeler, you're very different than I am.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's fair.
And so to me, this is the kind of game that it would be right up your alley.
Yep.
Right.
But
Ooh,
I
I'm gonna
gotta
make
tell
this
you-
cool guy with all these little things.
But I got to tell you, like, you buy a house gang, not some Venator gang that you're trying to, you know, kit bash a bunch of stuff. You just buy a house gang. Like, those kits are, boom, you're set.
If you
I
played
want this.
Enforcers like you should
pieces
have.
per.
If you'd
17
been
pieces
playing
per model.
What?
17 pieces per model. The multi-part kits.
I mean,
Yeah,
they
love
are
those.
multi-part kits, but they're freaking gorgeous. I mean,
Oh, no, they are.
And they go
They're-
together
They're amazing.
perfectly.
Yep.
Perfectly.
Yep.
You know, just don't lose a cigar.
Yeah, I actually, to your point, Don, there, I would be curious if you played a different gang that's just not playing on hard
I would
mode,
be curious.
on a new system,
Yeah.
new rules that are crunchy and deep, if that would change your opinion, because you
never know.
You started on hard mode.
But look, that being said, yeah, I totally get it. And if you're not, you know, hey, there's probably guys here who will buy your Necromunda books if you want to offload them. Seriously, like if you're not enjoying it, that's cool. I have to say, I played before. I think I played you when we did the Necromunda versus.
Yeah, we did.
and you crushed me because you were like, oh well, you know, here are my what's the female gang?
Escher.
The Escher gang. You're like, oh, I do this and I do this. I hate with this flamer, and then I do this. And I'm like, what?
Oh,
what
hand
ju-
flamers. I hate hand flamers.
what just happened? You know, but I was like, oh, I see.
Right.
Going into this campaign, you know, I still had that lingering in my head, but I was like, okay. And so I talked to Dan and Campbell, and I was like, well, I'm telling you this, and they're like, oh, you got to take smoke grenades, dude. If you got these close combat guys, you want to get in there, and smoke grenades are going to help. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take some smoke grenades. Nobody was aware of how good smoke grenades were when I hit the campaign table. And it was like, even Bill was like, I got to look into these smoke grenades, you know, because I was like, smoke grenade, move forward. And I didn't, I
Let's
won
get
one
in for
game.
script.
I lost the other game. And I lost the other game, like really pushing him, but I still lost. And I was like, all right, yeah, that didn't go as planned. But man, you know, like I felt like I kicked him in the teeth, got my face smashed in.
You
Cool.
killed a guy.
Yeah, I did kill a guy.
You got the first kill of the
That's
campaign.
right.
That's true.
Oh, the dead guy.
Dead guy.
Yeah.
And so for me, like the campaign so far, now not as far along
Right.
as you were, was okay. It was rewarding because I got a ton of cash.
But-
so I was like, now I know what I'm buying.
So, for example, the gymnasium scenario.
Yeah.
We had one guy each. So, one guy turned the lights out, right? Yeah. And so, first
I
turn.
could tell it on somebody turned out the lights and somebody was doing something. I'm not going to say what it was,
No, so
but I'm not happy.
first turn, right? Because you're activating in sequence, right? So somebody who activated it before me
Yeah.
runs up, hits me with a hand flamer, right? These are supposed to be Jews. How the hell they get that? Anyway, hits me with a hand flamer, sets me on fire. When I go to activate, you run 2d6 in a random direction.
Yeah, because
and
you're on fire, man. Yeah.
right. So I'm in the exact far opposite end of the gym from where everybody else is with the lights out.
And the worst part is everybody can see him because he's on fire and the lights are out.
That's true. I was like, oh, so you survived because you're away from the. Nope, but you're on
No.
fire. So they can shoot
So
you.
I put myself out. The next turn, I spend 2 turns then trying to get back to where the fight is. And somebody basically is able to double move over and knock the guy out.
Sure.
And I did nothing. The only thing I
You
did
know
was
what you're
roll 2d6 in a
describing,
random
though,
direction.
is an incredibly narrative and wonderful situation to experience secondhand. But it's a beautiful story.
Oh, I'm dying.
But I
Like,
can
I got tears in
absolutely
my eyes.
see how
That's so
frustrating
funny.
that would be. Yes.
But
Not
I
fun to
basically
play, but amazing to watch to tell.
I made 2 dice rolls the whole game.
I could see that being
And I'm like,
frustrating.
I mean, that happened to me in Warcry where I did 2 dice rolls and won the game handily. And it sucked. I hated it.
Right.
Because it's like, well, what was the point of that?
Well, you're sitting next to the master of the worst case scenario Blood Bowl game on it for an entire season.
So,
Yeah.
So, you know, he we get it. It happens. And this again, punchline, that can happen with this.
In all honesty, if you are looking to unload those books, check with this group because they're
I bought them electronically.
So.
All right.
If you want to sell your phone.
I know a guy.
On that note, thank you so much for joining us. Please leave us reviews on iTunes. We absolutely love reviews on iTunes. Doesn't matter what country you're in, we see them. Absolutely love that. We have a Facebook group which continues to grow and is continuing going strong. You heard us talking about it during the Elite Choice section. Just incredible stuff going on there. And we have a Patreon, which is still going strong with various levels, offering various benefits. You can see that in our show notes. And Jody had something he wanted to add. Yeah, thanks. You were pointing and I'm like, oh, that's right. Jody.
Yeah, one last little final message here. A friend of the show, James Hewitt, designer of Adeptus Titanicus and Blitzbowl, which are both near and dear to our collective hearts.
Yep.
He has his very own games company called Needy Cat Games, and they are on Kickstarter right now with their very first effort into a self-produced game. It's called Robot Fight Club. It takes on the story behind it is you are a group of kids who have an after-school robot fighting club.
Perfect.
And you play out. It's got a little bit of little battle bots, a little robo rally for those who like that. Anyway, wanted to give it a plug and a shout out. Go check it out. Robot Fight Club on Kickstarter, and wish James best of luck on his.
We love
game.
us some James Hewitt.
Yeah, he's a good dude and super active in the community, and deserves a give it a look if you can.
All right. Anything else you guys want to throw out there? Lords and Heroes plug? No,
they're crushing it over there.
All right. I don't know why you're so hesitant to pitch it here. No? Okay. All right. Well, until next time, this is Carl.
This is Jody.
This is Josh.
This is Adon.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where in the sewers of Necromunda, we all float down here.
Hive brats and Juves all have a home.
What happens in the Underhive ends in fun paperwork.
And where we all keep our cool.
Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you soon, though sadly not at Adepticon. What a bummer to end it on. That was not the sound effect button. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.